What's up, Warriors? Welcome back to the Battlefield of Mind. I'm Rick, creator of the Warriors Way mindset. And I've got somebody here, may not need the introduction, but another fellow warrior in the fray out there with our brothers. Tim, it's Arrigo or Arrigo? I want to say it right.
Arrigo.
Arrigo, I knew I had it. All right. Beyond driven, this guy is out there on the front lines just like we are. And this one's going to be an episode that I want you guys to get your notebooks out because we're going to drop a lot of earned wisdom. When we talk about the parts of us that, like, it's not read in books, it's earned on the battlefield. This is a battlefield conversation, guys who have actually been on the front line. So, Tim, we were just talking about how we started off this from need, not greed, how we started off because we saw that people needed to be there for others who were just making it burn and churn. And there's something that I took from this, and this is something we've been talking in the Warriors Way. You have found yourself that you needed to be the hero for others that you never had.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is something we're like, all right, keep going with your story on this. We saw when I was at rock bottom, when I was in my shit, when I was hurting, man, I didn't have anybody there, but man, did I need somebody there. And so now I've taken on the mantle or the mission, the purpose that God put on me to be the guy who's there for people who have nobody there.
It's powerful. It's the law of reciprocity. I think so many people are stuck and they get to a place in their journey where they enter back and you see rates of recidivism, or you see people entering back into these cycles of, self-destructive patterns in their life. And they wonder why they keep going back. It's because you didn't get the other half. The other half was you were supposed to go out and you were supposed to impart that wisdom, knowledge, experience onto somebody else. And in that you experience how your value is actualized in an interaction with another person, how providing value to another human, it doesn't matter if it's just a conversation about how that changes. That first time that ever happened to me, the very first time that ever happened to me, I had just gotten off of heroin. I had hepatitis C. Had just gotten off of heroin, just got off of methadone, Xanax, got off of all hard drugs. And I went through a detox from hell. In an apartment alone by myself, hit my knees, called out to Jesus, said, if you're really real, come into my life and change my life. My life, instantaneously, I had a call in my life. I could not deny this call. This call was so heavy on my life. I had like crippling anxiety every single day. And I started working in mental health and substance abuse. And I show up to a facility one night and I was working a graveyard shift. It was the only job that I could get. It was the only opening they had, but I took it. And I started working this graveyard shift, and I arrived at work one night and there was a gentleman, he was standing outside with like a black trash bag, like how I used to be. And he was standing there with a black trash bag. And I was like, kind of walked in the office, kind of walked past him, walked in the office. And I said, to the guys in the office, the staff, I said, hey, what's up with that guy outside? And they're like, oh, that guy? F that guy. And I'm like, wait, I thought we were like helping people here. And they're like, no, you know what? We've been trying to talk to him all day. He's trying to leave right now, and he's not having it from anybody. The owners come and talk to him. We've tried talking to him. He's been outside there for about the last 6 hours. And I'm like, okay, well, can I talk to him? And they're like, yeah, I mean, you're wasting your breath, but go ahead, go talk to him. So I walked outside. I started having a conversation with him. And I didn't even say anything profound to him. I just connected to the guy. I just empathized with his situation. I just let him know that I'd been there, and I just was there to support him. Like, I didn't try to convince him of anything. I just said, hey man, like, I know where you're at and I just want to be here to support you. And I didn't think anything of it. I came back into the office, and the next day I came back to work again, like 11:30, walking through the driveway, and he's standing there waiting for me. And he's like, hey, Tim. I go, hey, what's up, man? And he goes, and he, with tears in his eyes, and he was like, thanks for what you did for me last night. And he goes, if you didn't do that for me, man, I was going to leave, and I was in a very bad way. And I realized that night, as I went back into the office, I kind of sat by myself and I was staring at a wall. And this kind of wave came over me where I realized it's been a very long time since I've actually done something for somebody else like that. And it felt so good. And all I thought next was, I want to do that again. And then the thought that came after that thought was, Well, if you want to give more, you need to be more. So that was really my whole personal development journey, working in the clinical setting and working in the environments I worked in Southern California. Wasn't even about, it was about nothing other than being better for the people that I served. It had nothing to do with me. Like, I see so much stuff on the internet about people like, work on yourself so that you can be, for me, it wasn't even about that. Like, for me, it was about, if I can be better in every single way that I can be better, both physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, if I can show up better here at this location, at these facilities for these people that are struggling and literally hanging on by a thin thread, then I can help more people and I can make a greater impact. And I think invariably all of us, especially as men, we want to make a difference. We want to feel like we can make a difference in the world. And so, yeah, I mean, becoming the hero in your own story, right? Eventually you start to liberate others, because when your trauma is meant to be overcome, your pain is meant to be overcome, because what's on the other side of that is a unique set of skills, character virtues, attributes, insight, wisdom, knowledge, and experience and tools that you can impart onto somebody else. And that becomes like, you tell your story of what you overcame, and that becomes somebody else's survival guide, right? That becomes somebody else's way out. So, yeah, I think that 100% has to be a part of everybody's story. It can't just be for you, because if it's just for you, it's not going to last. You're not going to want to sustain it, or you'll just stagnate.
Yeah, it's amazing. Actually, what I'm doing, just so you know what I'm doing, I write because you do what I do, and you'll put 20 good points in one monologue, and people will miss the 20 good points that you just made. So there's a lot of really cool things. I'm going to do a recap based on some of the stuff I caught from what you did. And you talked about the people who know but don't do. And this, you led into the men's purpose element, which we'll get to the hero's journey. I want to give you a little bit of praise here on this thing. When you talked about I had to beat heroin and Hep C, people don't really understand the statistic on this. Like, alcohol is one thing, or prescription drugs is another thing. These are difficult. Opioids, very fucking difficult. But heroin. Do you probably know the percentage? What's the percentage of people that break heroin?
A very small percentage. I think it's
Around,
somewhere around 7 to 10%, or maybe even lower.
If you round up, it's closer to 1%.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
I did not know it
you're
was that low.
1%er. And also, when it comes to heroin, I don't know a single person who survived heroin who didn't find their spirit side, who didn't connect with God. I don't know a single one who made it through who didn't find God.
Yeah, that was my breaking point, was that moment.
But that's also your Phoenix moment. This is where
100%.
you had to burn out and rise from the ashes. And this is where, when people are going, what's your fucking credentials? You go like, listen, I read the books. I got the certificates. I've got the plaques. They're all in storage. I went through the fucking shit. That's my fucking credentials. And this is why I say challenge your gurus. See if he did it.
Yeah.
Ask hard questions. See if he knows what it's like. Because I see too many people stuck at the bridge to get out of hell that hasn't been there for 40 years because it said in a book that somebody read there's a bridge to get out of anxiety or depression there. And I see a big group of people going, I must be fucking this up. I must be doing it wrong because the guy who wrote a book said there's a bridge here and I just can't cross it. And we're like, dude, we come in here, that bridge hasn't been there for fucking 40 years. What are you talking about? You got to go this way. You can't get out of there from there's nothing there. It's a fucking pit, dude. And people feel like they're the problem because they've never been into hell telling people how to get out. And those people feel like they're failing. They're not good enough. But you're a 1%er. Heroin is one of the ones that takes 99%. They don't make it.
Yeah, my heroin addiction was bad. I was on the streets of Santa Ana. I was literally the guy with the needle hanging out of his neck in a McDonald's bathroom. Like, that was me. I weighed like 125 pounds. I was also at one point on methadone and heroin, so I had a double habit, and I was addicted to prescribed Xanax. And that all came out of my own pain. That all came as a way to escape reality, because I had no awareness of what was actually even going on with me. Right. And so I looked primarily at the surface of what my issues were. And to be honest, like, I didn't want everything that was being offered to me as a solution to my problem did not fit in what I wanted to do. It was like sitting in a room. And again, If somebody wants to do this and this works for them, that's great. But for me, it didn't work. I didn't want to sit in a room, right, 40 years after my addiction, be identifying as, an addict and, drinking, strong coffee and sitting there talking to other guys that just wasn't my desire. Like, I wanted to put it behind me. I
Well,
wanted to overcome it.
we know why though, right? It makes sense. I also am against that element for AA and any other addiction systems, is because your identity matters. And if you call yourself something, it's difficult to break the habits of what you call yourself. If I
Yes.
call myself Rick the smoker, well, it's going to be difficult for me to quit smoking because it is my identity as a smoker. And so if I say my name is Rick and I am an alcoholic, this is a belief system that is created. So if I try to break that or go against that, I will have a dissonance inside of myself that challenges, you are an alcoholic, you are a smoker, you are this. And if I am, it's difficult to be opposite. And so I tell people very differently, and you did hit the fucking nail. Some people probably missed what you just said. It's not about the identity issue there. It's about understanding the pain was from something I didn't want to face. And I was doing every distraction I could to not deal with the reality of my pain. And I don't think people can look at a man with empathy and say his heart is fucking broken. He's not a piece of shit drug addict. He has a broken heart. And instead of looking at you as human, they look at you as garbage. You'll be
Yeah.
judged or shamed or blamed immediately that you are bad. And you go like, no, I am hurt and I don't know how to deal with it. So I'm doing anything to not. And this is where, when you work at a core, instead of address a symptom, this is a very different conversation. It's in the denial area of what is the hurt you don't want to face, not you have an identity issue and start with that. It's the opposite side. And that's why people stay stuck in these addiction systems for their whole lives, because they never go into the core. They just talk about change your name. And I think people will miss that. You just fucking hit that. That's powerful. That's how it works.
Yeah. And I knew at the end of the day, I knew that I started to realize that the drugs aren't my problem. Like, it's a way that I solve a problem or try to solve a problem. And the problem is, why am I uncomfortable in my own skin? Like, why do I look at reality this way? Why are my relationships so toxic and unhealthy? Like, why am I in a relationship with myself that is the epitome of abusive, the epitome of abandoning, the epitome of neglecting? Why do I have this type of relationship with myself? And it wasn't until I started to look at all that and actually started to peel back those layers. And see, that's the sad part too, is you have people that have genuinely overcome it, but they continue to tell the same story. And the same story is not actually, to a large degree, a story that is the full story, because they really haven't been exposed to enough of the education and the insight to see and understand the whole picture. Like, when we talk about adverse childhood experiences, right? There was a study done by Kaiser and the CDC in the 1990s, right? The lead chief investigator for the study was a guy named Dr. Vincent Folletti. And they did a study with 17,000 middle-class Americans. 33% of these people had been to college. So this was a big survey that they did with a lot of people in San Diego. And they measured these people based on 10 categories of what they call adverse childhood experience. So it was abuse, both physical and emotional abuse, right? Also sexual abuse, neglect, both physical and emotional neglect. And then an area that they called household dysfunction, which was substance abuse in the home, criminal behavior in the home, mental illness on the home, parental separation or divorce, and exposure to domestic violence. And they determined if you had 4 or more of those experiences, you were 7 times more likely to be an alcoholic. If you had 4 or more of those experiences, you were 10 times more likely. You were, I think, you were 2/3 of injection drug use could be attributed to those events. If you had 4 or more of those experiences, you were at 4 times greater risk of being exposed to substance abuse at an earlier age. And if you had more than 5 of those experiences, you were 10 times more likely to have a substance use disorder. So it's all right there in the literature and the data. It all supports it. It's all right there that this is a proven thing, that trauma right? And here's the thing, everybody goes through trauma. So it's not actually the trauma that's the problem. It's the absence of the connections and the relationships when you go through trauma, right? It's not because what do relationships do? They buffer the stress, they buffer the pain, right? When you have someone you can go and talk to and you can connect with and you can support you through that. Like a lot of people talk, well, it's the trauma. It's not just the trauma. There's two things. It's the trauma, but it's also the absence of the relationships. Because if you're being abused or if you're being neglected, chances are those people that are in that environment that are supposed to support you are the people abusing you and neglecting you. Right. So the reality is it's the two-part process, because if you're traumatized, which most people go through something traumatic in their life, right? Nobody comes out unscathed, right? If you're traumatized and you go through something, those relationships are supposed to buffer the stress. But what happens when you go through trauma and you don't have relationships? Well, two things. Number one, you hold in your pain. And what happens is that pain turns into stress. That stress turns into toxic stress. Is what's called clinically, it's called toxic stress. And what that does is creates a chemical imbalance. That's why you get in fights. That's why you don't have friends in school, or you have trouble making friends. That's why you have ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder. That's why you have these problems, right? And then typically that creates that chemical imbalance, right? Leaves your brain susceptible or vulnerable to developing an unhealthy relationship with substances. Because when you put the drugs in that brain responds differently than a normal person's brain. That brain sees it as a form of not recreational use, like Johnny down the street who has a great life, right? But the brain sees it as a form of self-medication. So number one, right, when you go through the traumas and you have no relationships, it compounds, the emotions compound because you're left alone in your pain, number one. Number two, you develop a relationship with an inanimate object, right? Drugs, alcohol, the bottle, the pipe, the syringe, whatever it is, or whatever behavior it is, because there's a ton of behaviors you can develop addictions over as well, right? And that behavior, you then look to receive, that behavior can only reciprocate something that you're looking for really in reality within relationships, but is absent and in relationships. And so you're receiving it from this inanimate object. And that inanimate object can only reciprocate it in an artificial way. So I developed an actual relationship with drugs where I didn't take my problems to people. I took my problems to drugs, right? Like when something was going on with me, like I didn't talk, I just knew 100%, I'm 100% confident I could go and I could buy a bag of whatever it was and I could use it and then it would change how I felt. Now, did I know all that at the time? No, but I didn't know any of that. All I knew was that, why do I have this insatiable desire to continue this behavior? And why are so many things going on inside of me that I don't know how to understand or even talk about? And why is everybody in my life operating as if nothing's going on with me? And so I think that, when it comes to the traumas that we go through in life, it's all about relationships. It's all about connection, because what's left over at the end when the event is over, what are you really dealing with when you're healing from trauma? You're overcoming the emotional residue of it's the imprint, it's the memories, it's the emotions that's left over, right? Because if you have a memory with a negative emotion, well, it's trauma. But if you have like when you think about it, you get this emotional charge, right? That's why EMDR is so important, right? But when you get that emotional charge from it, it's like that's called trauma. But if you have a memory with no emotion, well, now you have clarity. Well, now you have discernment. Now you have wisdom. Now you have insight. Now you have the ability to understand your story. And that's a place we need to get to. You can't change the past, but you can change your relationship to it.
Man, again, you went through like 10 things for people to try to grab the pieces here. And so it's a really good thing. On that test, I actually did that test. I don't know what you rated on that test, but I remember I did that test. And I was between 7 and 8 out of 10.
Me too.
Yeah. So we were there. Like when people look at us and like, you guys should be fucking psychopaths.
Yeah.
Like even when I was working with a guy on this, he's like, you should be a fucking madman if this is your thing. I'm like, I had to go through all of those.
Yeah.
And so like, this is where people, that's why I say like, when I knew immediately when I got to see you, you can tell which guys have been in it and you can tell which guys just read about it. Yeah. There's a very different energy for the ones who have like, I had to kill fucking 10 demons just to be here.
Yes.
And the guys who are like, well, it says here demons of this degree would, you never fucking killed a demon, man.
Yeah, you've never been there. You've never looked into the. I've seen black demons go into people's bodies. I've prayed demons out of people at facilities. Um, I've had like close encounters with real darkness, like
Mm-hmm.
real people that kill people. Like I've been in
Mm-hmm.
environments where uh, I've been in those places, so I know what that's like. And that when you've been through those experiences, it only brings another level of like you understand that this is a spiritual thing. It's a spiritual war. Like you've obviously like this is frontline ministry, what we do. And
Mm-hmm.
so you understand like there's a bigger picture here. It's not about reading a book. It's like, no, man, this is a spiritual war. And the reality is, what are we really doing? Like we're inviting people on the journey with us. We're saying like, hey, brother, wake up. This isn't about this isn't about changing your behavior. This is about a spiritual awakening that needs to take place inside your life. But check it out. Like you even said it earlier, right? It's like you got to hit that bottom in your life. You got to hit that place in your life where you're in so much pain and you're so broken in that place. But the beauty in that is that that's where we find our strength too. That's where we find our resolve.
But you're right on something. And this is where I think you and I have found our calling in alignment, is that there's a huge need right now for men because men do not receive empathy from their partners in many scenarios. And so I did a survey. I have hundreds of guys in my groups too. And so I did a survey with my men. I'm like, maybe this is incorrect. Maybe the ladies really are empathy monsters. Maybe they're just brilliant at it. Let's check and see. And so I asked 3 questions. I said, do your feelings matter to you? And they said, yes. I said, do you feel like your feelings matter to her? And all of them said no, except for 3 guys, but 2 of them were in the first 2 weeks of their relationship and they both failed. And one guy was in denial about his relationship and they got divorced. So I'm still at 100% if I look at this. No empathy for 100 guys. I stopped the survey at 100. I was like, I have nobody saying yes. And the last question was, do you wish that she did care about your feelings? And they all said yes. And so if women are really showing empathy for men, that's a very different thing. Now they mix up empathy and well-being. Like, well, I took care
Sure.
of his, dishes, or I packed his lunch, or his laundry was done. I'm like, which one of those is a feeling? I'm like, those aren't feelings, and like, well, he needs to be the rock for my relationship. Tim needs to be the rock. And I'm like, oh, that sounds awesome. What feelings do rocks have?
Yeah.
They do not have feelings. And so to have this need for connection, I found our guys when we started doing our support. We do daily support. I had that call right before I talked to you. I had about 30 guys just on a call going, hey, I just need that backup today. And we do that every single day to make sure if any guys are in it, they're not in it alone.
Yeah.
And they hit those rock bottoms when they hit. And so I'm like, hey, we need training. And I'm with you with the connection, but men don't have connection. We're isolated. And you
No.
talked about the self-medication, especially when it goes to alcohol. Boys drink right away. That's why I say name a country song and hip hop song that don't have drinking.
Yeah.
Like they're almost all at the bar or at the club. Everyone's drinking. And I'm like, we drink to meet the girl. We drink when we lose the girl. We're always drinking. And I'm like, every coping mechanism says distract yourself through alcohol. No wonder so many people go right to the bottle. And so the isolation and the need for distraction when you do not have connection seems like without mentors, support, or belonging, it goes right to distraction from the reality. And then we're judged for that too. You're not empathized. You're not going, man, my guy just got hurt. Man, his heart just got broken. Oh, damn, that dude got blasted. He lost his business, his wife, he lost his kids. He doesn't get to see them now every other fucking weekend. And he was the guy who took care of everything. He didn't cheat. He wasn't beating her. He was a good dude and just lost everything. Like, yeah, well, he'll bounce on his feet, figure it out. No, everything that guy lives for was just taken away. He's supposed to just what? Pull his bootstraps up. He's got no support. And so our guys come in and they're going to go, man, I got to bounce this off of somebody. Nobody gives a fuck. And you go like, damn, Tim, I fucking see you, bro. I'm in this with you. How can I serve and how can I be of service? Dude, I see you. It's not about me. It's about you today. Let's have your day. I don't know how you guys deal with the suicide talks on this, but this isolation with distraction, it makes suicide very logical. It's very difficult to justify suicide not being the most logical thing when you are all alone with the demons and they get free reign, fear, doubt, anger, distraction, suppression, anxiety. These things, it's a team sport. And if you're playing solo and you don't have your own team, you're going to get your fucking ass kicked. And they do. And the only logical thing is to end the game. And so I don't know how you guys have dealt with this, but we have found that I used to have to take those. I'm the only one qualified in our group to take those calls. And so I had to take those calls to be almost every week. Now, these thoughts still come up, but it's not as severe as it used to be. So it's easier to beat. But we started a group at night, just a night group, hang out, not do the deep work, not go into battle, just you belong. And the guys who would be in the middle of the night drinking Jack Daniels next to a fucking gun, like those guys now had a place where like, I do want to hear what you have to say, man. And you are important to me. And I value you being here. And you're important, man. You're not a piece of shit. You're actually one of us. And I'm happy to hear your story. And damn, you went through that. You matter to me. And no deep work. Like you said, that guy at the front door, I didn't go and do any deep work with him. I just said, you're important, man. And I like to hear what you have to say. And sometimes that fucking glimmer of hope is enough for a guy to go, I'm not ending it today because somebody gave a fuck. And that's
100%.
the game we're in today, where our guys are like, nobody gives a fuck about me, man. Not about my well-being, but me.
A lot of guys feel that way. A lot of guys feel that way. And I've dealt with that over the years. I myself had close encounters with that where I just wanted to end it. And what I found is a majority of guys, they don't actually want to die. What they want to do is they think about suicide because even just the thought of suicide gives them some temporary relief and temporary escape. It's like even just the thought takes them temporarily away from the pain for one moment, 1 second. And inside, it's like if you're really, what does that say? It speaks to a guy's powerlessness. It speaks to his hopelessness. It speaks to where he's really at this juncture inside of his life, that he literally is thinking about that. And here's the one that really kills me, that, people would be better off if I'm not around. And the sad part is when a guy is at that position and you get to talking to him and you actually start digging into what is actually causing these things, he feels like a burden. And it's like, brother, check it out. Like, have you ever seen another man be vulnerable? Yeah, I have. Have you ever judged that man? Have you ever felt like he was burdening you with his problems? No, I actually was glad. It made me feel good, like I could help him. Cool, man. So you feeling like a burden has nothing to do with this conversation. It has everything to do with what kind of message you were sent about your emotions being a burden when you were younger. And that was about somebody else's, right, trauma and pain that they projected onto you, right, about, well, your feelings are a burden here. Why? Because they had no resources and no ability to actually help you. So they'd rather just invalidate you and not have that conversation with you. But we're not doing that here.
Well, here's the funny thing with this. I'm right with you. Here's another way I turn that. I'm like, because I like how you did the thing where you said, hey, did you ever help a guy who was having a hard time? He's like, yeah. How'd you feel? It's like, I felt good, man. I like helping guys. I'm like, so how come you're the only one allowed to feel like that?
Yeah.
Why can't somebody help you and they feel good too? Why are you the only one who's allowed to have the monopoly on feeling good? Why can't other people feel good too from you being helped?
Great point.
You feel good helping people. Let them feel good too. Why you got to bogart all the feel goods? And they're like, well, yeah, I guess so. I'm like, dude, I'm going to have my day, man. I'm going to have my day where I get knocked down. I'm going to get blasted. And I'll be like, oh, we're on the front line. Are you going to laugh and judge, or are you going to hold your hand out and go, get up, brother? It's your it's your turn. You're down. We switch spots. Life doesn't take it easy on us.
What's funny is I keep thinking, as we're having this conversation, I keep thinking about, the warrior's way. I keep thinking about that, and that keeps coming up for me. And I keep thinking about, so many times as men look at their problems and they don't want to talk about their pain, or they don't want to talk about their past because they feel like they're making excuses, right? It's like, or I'm blaming something. And it's like, bro, like, we're not blaming anybody. Like, we're not blaming anyone. A lot of this is conditioning. It's generational, number one. Mm-hmm. And number two is, these things aren't excuses. They're reasons. I've always told people, if you got a pit bull from the shelter, and let's say you took that dog home and you had a barbecue with some of your friends, and one of your buddies went to go reach out to pet your dog, and your dog kind of maybe snarled at him and showed his teeth, or maybe put his tail between his legs and ran into his doghouse. And your friend was like, hey man, what's wrong with your dog? All you would have to say is, oh, he's a rescue. And without knowing anything about that dog's history, people would automatically attribute the way the dog acted to the way the dog was raised or experiences that happened in that dog's life. So it's not excuses, it's reasons, right? If you had a tree in the backyard and it didn't produce good fruit, the fruit was bitter, you would look at the root system, you would look at the soil, you would look at the conditions that it's in. So it's all about really, as men, like stepping out of that and really realizing like there's a bigger story here. You're not talking about people, you're talking about conditioning, you're talking about programming, you're talking about, right? You're
Beliefs.
talking about things that have impacted you and operated in your life without your consent. And what it really means, right, to step into a place of warrior in your life, it means becoming multidimensional, right? You can't solve every problem with force. And understanding that, like, hey, if somebody attacks me on the street with a machete, like, oh, don't get it twisted. I'm absolutely capable of violence, right? I am. Believe me, I know what I'm capable of. But at the same time, if my daughter falls off her bike and skins her knee, I'm also capable of empathy and compassion. If my wife is hurting because maybe she got let go from her job, like, I'm also capable of active listening and being present and being calm. Like, I'm able to meet the moment with whatever the moment most requires from me. It's my ability to be multidimensional. It's not like, I think a lot of guys think like, oh, I'm going to start talking about my feelings and I'm going to become like this emotional dude. And I don't want to do that. Like, then I'm going to lose it's like, no, bro, those parts of you are still there. What we're doing is we're making you a more comprehensive man. You're making yourself a more comprehensive man. You're stepping into a place where you're becoming not just this one-dimensional cardboard cutout of who you thought you needed to be, right, for society. It's like you're becoming multidimensional. You're becoming a multidimensional man. And that's the power, right? Is when guys understand that, like, okay, so you're not taking something away from me. This is only adding on to who I am. This is only making me more of the man that I was called to be by God.
Mm-hmm. There's a yin yang to it, and I call it mind, heart, body, soul. And so you've got mind and body, and this is the know and do, and then you've got spirit, which is connect, and then you've got heart, which is feel. And most of our guys want to neglect the parts that seem illogical. I got a lot of engineer types. That's a logical captain, like the Spock ones. Like they're like, why would I have a feeling that just gets in the way of the task? Like, I don't need to connect with this, those elements of ourselves. And so being multidimensional, this is when I first started doing this. I was looking at which guys have a higher aptitude in which things. And I called body side my paladins. I called heart side my Spartans, the fire. I called the spirit side my Jedis. There's a force you can't see, but it's there. And then I had my generals or my tacticianers, my strategists. Those are my mind side. And I'm like, which one do you relate with most? And I would tell stories of each one. And here's how they handle. And they go, I feel more like the strategist, or I'm more of a paladin, or I'm a Spartan. I can feel which side. And as I keep working through guys, I realized a couple of years ago, I'm like, we're not one or even a combination of two. We are all. It's just which ones are the highest levels, which ones have
Yeah.
we put the most work into. And I realize it's a yin yang. So mind and body are both action and doing, and then heart and spirit are both about being. And I started catching on that the rules are reversed. And that's why guys really struggle with the other side to it, is because on mind and body, like surrender is a bad fucking word. I do not quit. I will fight. I will fucking keep on go. You quit. I'm never surrender. I will never surrender. Right. And then on the spirit side, it's like surrender, man. It'll make you 10 times stronger. Love, you don't force in love. You fall in love. You let go. You surrender to it. You're like, nope, no, surrender's bad. No, never, nope, no. I'm like, you're not understanding the balance between us. When you surrender on that side, you're 10 times stronger. It's like going Super Saiyan. You got to surrender. You got to let that part go so that way you can control the energy element. And you're like, nope. When I see the denial between the multidimensional stuff, when I watch the patterns, the biggest curses I've seen for men and women, the denial is the one that gets everybody. It's the root for addiction. It's the root cause for people to lose their life, is because denial takes your minutes from you. You live a persona, or you live a fake alternative version of yourself to try to belong or fit in or not be judged or exiled or hated. And so men have to do a suppression of feelings. We have to. We learn that crying, nobody gives a fuck. And they don't. And today's society says, no, we want your vulnerability. And then I get call after call, just like you do. It's like, yeah, I ugly cried in front of my wife and she won't sleep with me anymore. You're like, what the fuck happened? She said she wanted vulnerability. I just let it all out. I unloaded, and now we sleep in separate bedrooms, and I don't know what the fuck just happened. I did the thing that she
Yeah.
said. And it's like there's a system for radical acceptance that's missing. So guys start suppressing. We start denying our feelings. Suck it up. Be a man. Cowboy up. Don't be a bitch. That's bitch shit. You're like, wait a second.
It's so
Being
sad.
human? Being
That's
human is
that's the
bitch
part that
shit.
really kills me. That's that when I see people like online like push that narrative, and what it is it's like all you're forcing a guy to do is overcompensate further. All you're forcing him to do is walk further and further into the desert away from the oasis that was his healing process. It's like, so all you're doing is you're guiding him on a path that already didn't work, but you're just taking him further and further and further on that path. The reality is there is like, that's just pure force. Again, like you're trying to solve every problem with force. The same power through mentality used in certain situations is like a round peg through a square hole in others. So I love what you said about the vulnerability piece. And I've always looked at it like there's healthy vulnerability and then there's unhealthy vulnerability, right? There's the vulnerability where we engage in self-pity and self-loathing and we're a victim and we cry and we don't really want support. We don't really want feedback. We don't really want solution. We just want attention, or we want people to validate where we're at and why we're, the excuses that we have and rationalizations and justifications about why we do what we do. Right. And then there's healthy vulnerability. It's a guy that's scared to open up. It's a guy who doesn't want to talk, but he finally starts to do that. And he talks about his problem, but he's eager for solution. Help me through this. I don't know. I'm lost, brother. What do you got for me here? Thank you for telling me I'm not alone, man. And this is hard for me, but I want to work through this. And I think a lot of men, when they think about vulnerability, it has a negative connotation attached to it. They look at it like it's a negative thing, like it's a liability. And the sad part is they've created relationships because of a lot of their denial and because of a lot of their facade. They've created or been attracted to women in relationships that would not actually support the evolved version of them. So I always tell guys like, look, man, you're going to either evolve out of this relationship or evolve with your partner. But regardless, like, you got to take the lead. And a lot of people ask me like, why don't you ever talk about women's issues? Because I'm not a woman.
It's, oh man, you're in my head. But before you go into the next thing, because you just fucking dropped a bomb. I don't think people will catch. They're like, yeah, okay, you said some things. I don't think you get the vulnerability element of things, but you also talked about the way the guys come in with victim mentality of venting and not wanting solutions and not wanting, I just want you to hear me. I just want to feel heard. I want to be loved for being. And men are not loved for being. We're not. And so when we look to our woman to do the same thing they expect us to do, it's very important I use that word. I expect you to be able to be my person I can vent to. Well, we both know people aren't trained to take someone's unload. We're not. And
No.
men aren't built for that. Just so I know, ladies, I tell our ladies, go vent to your friends and then make a list of what you actually want solved and then bring that to your guy, because we want to solve all of them. And we probably can. And so that's annoying. It's annoying to you. Well, when a guy does the same thing to a girl, he doesn't get the validation from his woman. Remember, they don't show empathy to their man, especially if we're both unhealthy when we started. And they're going to be like, no, ew, you're not being a real man. And then they'll start looking elsewhere to fit their needs, which they don't know, but it changes on a daily basis. You're just not it, though. Hypergamy will kick in which case the guy's looking for having the reciprocity, and that's not going to happen. So guys need to have a place where I can go, Tim, I got to be open with you, dude. I'm fucking hurting today, man. And you go, well, what is it, bro? Let me hear. Instead of like, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And that's,
Yeah.
well, if you're having a problem, what am I supposed to do?
Mm-hmm.
If you're not okay, how am I going to be okay? I guess I have to do everything then. You're like, wait a second. No, I'm just having a day. Well, I can't trust that you're not going to have another day and I won't be okay. I need safety, security, reliability, stability. I need all of these things. And you're not being that because you've shown you're too weak to handle a day.
Yeah. That entitled attitude towards that where it's like, And I've seen this time and time again where we'll be on a call with a gentleman and then he'll say, well, I need to get my wife involved for the decision. And it's like, and he's will not budge on that. Okay. We try to talk him through it. He's not open to it. We'll get his wife on the call, and his wife talks for an hour about how big of a piece of shit he is.
Correct.
But yet, ironically, when it comes time for him to change, she sabotages his ability to change with her confirmation bias of saying, well, I don't think he's going to change. No, 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 no. The reality is your contempt is so real in this relationship, and you don't want him to change because you haven't had to look at yourself for 25 years because he's the primary problem in your mind and he's got all the problems. And no, the reality is that he's going to change in this program. And when this man changes and evolves, that everything that you use that was maladaptive and dysfunctional no longer is necessary or works.
Well, to be exposed.
Yeah,
it'll all be exposed. And it'll also show that her system of control over will then be challenged.
Yes.
And she will lose control if she allows either of us in. We fuck that up for people.
Majorly.
We fuck that up. And I can, man, my heart to you. I actually had a come to Jesus moment. It was about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, where I was seeing the same thing, where when you build a healthy man from an unhealthy man, he is confident, solid, knows thyself, has good boundaries, understands like, hey, these are my limits and not limits. I will not overcommit. I will do as I say, like a solid fucking warrior. I will go in, I will protect, I will provide, I will preside. I will be the man that this house needs and my children need. Well, the people who start, getting upset are the ones who, when they make boundaries, were the ones getting the most when they had no boundaries. Yeah. And it starts exposing the lack of health in the relationship. And so I started having more breakups and more divorces because there would be such a difference. And they go, wait a second, I now recognize I was toxic. She is toxic. I'm no longer toxic. She's still toxic. Now she has the choice, grow with or sabotage. And when they start going sabotage, 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 and they go, I will not budge from being good. I'm being a good man and I will stay being a good man. And I will not lower myself because you won't grow. And it started creating a lot of divorces. And I'm like, guys, I'm actually kind of curious if I'm really creating more dysfunction than function, if I'm really creating disorder instead of order. And all of my guys who were divorced were like, bro, I was in a living fucking nightmare and didn't even know it. I didn't have my balls. I didn't have my confidence. I didn't have the will or purpose to live. I didn't have anything. And that lady was draining me of every ounce of humanity that I had. I was in a very toxic place because she chose me when I was in a toxic place. And I'm no longer toxic. And I don't want to drink bleach just because I'm thirsty.
No. And it's sad because I always tell guys, it's like, how many guys I encounter that end up in either A, an emotional affair, or B, a physical affair where it gets sexual, and they are even unclear that it's like, brother, first of all, nobody does that if they're happy inside their marriage. Okay, so let's start there. And we could blame you all day long, but and I'm not at all co-signing what you did. Be clear on that. But what I want to tell you is like, what this is really about for you is when we really dig into it, it's about validation. It's about affirmation. It's about recognition, about them feeling seen and heard and like somebody actually cares. It's about them feeling emotionally connected beyond anything else. I mean, that's why most of these guys, they'll engage in behavioral patterns that are all about trying to fill a need that's not being filled inside their marriage. So, but the problem is that then they acknowledge it and it compounds on what they've already done. It's like bad me again. It goes back to the shame and the guilt and what I haven't done. And then what happens is, you made a really good point, like with the sabotaging, right? Is so many guys have put themselves in a position where I tell them this, it's like, look, brother, you have two choices in the beginning. It's either walk away or stay. Okay. All right, I'm going to stay. Okay. So if you're going to stay, then this requires you, right? You have to take extreme ownership for why your relationship is the way it is. Because here's the deal. At the very end of this, you can still win. Because what happens is either A, you work on your mindset, you work on your emotional intelligence, right? You work on your conflict resolution, your communication skills, right? You learn how to walk this path to become a multidimensional man. And you either A, save your marriage, or B, the marriage doesn't work out, but at least you have total clarity knowing why, and are able to arm yourself with that knowledge and that insight and impart that or deploy that into your future, into the next relationship, and prepare yourself for whatever God has for you next. But get away from this codependency of, I just want to get my wife back. I just want to get my wife back. Because now your whole motivation for changing is extrinsic. And most guys, they don't change. As men, we usually don't choose to change or want to change until the house is on fire, until things are burning to the ground and we need to run inside to rescue people. So the reality is, as men, we sometimes, when we're in that denial, like you were saying, right? We're in that denial and it becomes so bad that finally we get reactive instead of being proactive. And what happens when we're in that reactive state, it's like, their wives are so angry at them, and their motivation to change doesn't come until she throws out the divorce. I want a divorce. It doesn't come until she says, I'm seeing another guy. So, or I'm so mad at you. There's so much contempt that I can't even respect you or talk to you. And there's no physical intimacy. So their motivation initially is external. So their goals are external. It's like, I just want my wife back. I just want my wife back. I try to convince guys and tell guys all the time that, look, brother, this is about you. Like, this is about you. You got to do this for you. You got to believe that you're worth this. And on the other side of this, I understand you want your wife back. But what if that doesn't happen? And let me ask you this, like, a lot of guys think that they're attracted to their wife, but a lot of times they realize it's not attraction, it's recognition, right? The brain is a survival organ. It seeks to recreate the same dynamics you've already encountered. So a lot of times you're in a relationship with somebody that mirrors and mimics a former relationship with either your dad or your mom, or some type of dysfunctional pattern where you ended up in a place that you call home because it's familiar and it feels safe and normal, even though it's completely juxtaposed in the antithesis of what you actually want. And so the reality is you are trying to conform to a system that is designed to keep you feeling the way you felt for 20, 30, 40 years. And the reality is, this new evolved, actualized version of you who becomes empowered and becomes truly changed, brother, do you even think that version of you is compatible inside this relationship? And then what they always say is like, I don't know. I don't know. Okay, are you willing to find out?
You have the courage to go in and find out. You're slaying shit right now. I want people to go back with their fucking notebooks, because you're saying things. I'm going to go back through this, but man, the wisdom you're putting down here, I don't think people are going to catch on. They'll just grab onto a piece of it and then move forward. Because a lot of the things you're saying, you're stacking a bunch of different lessons together, and I don't think people are going to get it. And I don't say it because they're not intelligent, it's because there's so much so fast.
I do
And
that a lot.
so, no, you and I both. That's why I've got 3 pages already. I'm taking notes because I pay attention. And that's why I'm not paying attention. I'm writing. And so there's a few things I'm going to just go back over to see if we can get people to catch what you said. First off, the shame, the guilt, the judgments that are put on people do create the issues. And you're not wrong. Our hardest thing is herding cats. Guys don't seek opinions, help, or anything until they're in crisis. And you're not wrong. Guys will come in like, dude, she's fucking burning the house down. And we're like, well, did you get the fire extinguisher system we talked about? Like, I didn't even know about it, dude. It's already on fire. I'm fucked, dude. I'm fucked. And we're like, you probably could have prevented some of this ahead of time. But this is the issue with guys. If guys are proactive, especially through autonomy, this is their independence. If they're proactive in autonomy, they're judged. You must be just looking at the door. You're a piece of shit. You don't really love your person. Judged. But if a guy is reactive, like, oh shit, the house is on fire, she's unhappy, her needs aren't met, and I didn't know, also judged. Guys are being judged like crazy. There's no win for men right now. Being proactive is bad. Being reactive is bad. And so crisis is the only time they go, I don't fucking have it. I fucking don't have it. I don't. Can you help me now? So we have to play damage control often very quickly. The choices to stay or to go based on shame and guilt and judgment. I even today have to pull guys out of guilt, the regret. I should have done this, or I didn't do that, or I wish I would have known that, and I could have done this, which is a link to bargaining, which is a big part of it too. And you get into the people who are like, man, guilt, guilt, guilt. And I'm like, well, what's guilt for? And what people don't understand about guilt is it's only necessary for one thing. It's the flashlight to point to the thing that you made the mistake on. I either did something or didn't do something. And they confuse this with shame. Guilt is feeling bad for what I did or didn't do. Shame is feeling bad for what I am. Not the same, but people confuse them often. And so guilt is just there to go, hey, you made a mistake. You're like, okay, cool. Well, what's a mistake for? Well, mistake is for learning lessons. That's what the mistake is for. The only way it's really a mistake is if you didn't learn from it. So if you learn from it, the mistake just leveled you up. Now I learned next time I would do it this way. Great. So you leveled up. So are you upset now that you leveled up and you learned something? Well, no, I'm not upset about that. I'm like, great. So the guilt was just there to point to the thing you needed to learn. You learned the thing. Let's get rid of that shit. You learned, you leveled up. Now you are wiser. You are a better man now. Don't do the same mistake again. You learned. Congratulations. If we can put some of these belief systems in there, not that the guilt is meant to give me shame, but the guilt is meant to level me up. We'll learn the lesson and then get wiser and stronger. Now you are a better pack leader instead of being the liability. And these guys give their power away. And when you talked about the missing pieces, to stay or go, or am I going to save the marriage? And you talked about, I'm going to get my wife back. That's my purpose. Get my wife back. I'm like, I think that marriage died, dude. You're going to have to start another one. And you're going to have to be a guy who's worthy of getting the relationship. Like, how would you win that girl if you met her? How would you get start over? You don't get to go back to who you were. You guys know too much. You've been through too much shit. You can't go backwards, but you can go forward because those people who fell in love are still in there. But you're going to have to be better than you were before to do it. So are you going to do what you said? Find your worth that's in it for you to be the guy who could win that girl. Not win her back, but win her now. And is she a girl who's worth winning now? Because you'll look at her level and go, she's really fucking mean, man. I don't know if I want a second. There's people where I'm like, I don't know if you get a second date. Like, if we went on that date, I don't know if you're worth the second date. You're really fucking mean. And you're not nice. And you nag and complain and you're mean. And I wouldn't give you a second date. And so is it really like, is the winning worth winning? And that goofs people up too. You put some good points here. The codependency versus autonomy. I think that you and I are aligned here. I'm not a relationship coach. And you're like, I'm not a woman. I have women's groups, but I have women run them. I'm like, that's leave it alone. I did it for 7 years. I'm not doing that anymore. It's not my thing. And so we looked at the autonomy as the only thing that guys have right now. And it's not meant to be cruelty or ultimatums. And I think that's where guys goof it up. I don't know if you've seen that too.
Oh yeah. Well, a
They're
lot
like,
of guys they think that. They think that.
yeah, I'll leave and everything. Oh, you don't like the towels folded half? You want them tri-folded? I'll fucking leave this bitch. I'll remove all of it. And you're like, slow down, man. That's just an agreement. Now, if she's like, I want another boyfriend and I'm going to go fuck him on the side, well, now it goes against non-negotiables. Well, now you can go, well, if you do want another boyfriend, that's a break of loyalty and trust. I can't be with someone like that. So now I have to remove provision. These are different conversations. So like people will start using it incorrectly. But again, this is where I actually want your expertise. I want your experiences on this one. Autonomy seems to be the only weapon guys can use right now to be able to have any type of enforcement for their value. And I am open if you have a better system, because I haven't heard anyone yet. I've asked this many times. Is there a better way for men to hold their line than autonomy? And that's independence for guys who don't know what the fuck that word means.
Yeah.
Like you have the ability to go if you need to go, just as she could have the ability to go if they need to go. If it's unhealthy, I can leave. Whereas some people have the codependency if they don't know what autonomy means.
I think of it in terms of a lot of guys try to lead with dominance instead of leading with influence. And it's important that they don't confuse autonomy and sovereignty over their life with dominance, right? That there is a flexibility and an open-mindedness in that process. And that the reality is that they have to become somebody who lives a life that's above reproach. It doesn't mean you're perfect, brother. But what it means is that you got to get yourself to a place where you're undeniable. Your wife walks down, your wife is asleep and she wakes up and walks down to get coffee and you're in the kitchen with your shirt off, right? shaking a protein shake because you just got back from the gym, right? You're in a position in your life where you're showing her, you're creating a man that in reality, through his autonomous self-development, personal development journey, you're creating a guy that's worth pursuing. And you're creating a guy that at the end of this process, it's not about who he's, what he's attaining and what he's acquiring. It's about who he's becoming, who he's being, who he is. So it's not the old process of like, if I just have these things, then I can do these things and I can be this person. It's like, no. If I am this person, if I become this person, then I can do these things and I can have these things. And so leadership is key. Now, a lot of the guys, they don't realize that their wife is lost. Their wife is at the same degree of feeling lost and confused as they were when they began. And they look at it and they have these expectations placed on their wife, like somehow their wife knows how to get out of this maze. Like untie the straitjacket. And it's like, well, your wife has no idea how to do that. But you, through your own journey and your own process, that's why self-awareness has the highest exchange rate out of any of the quadrants of emotional intelligence, more than motivation, social skills, relationship management, more than any of them. Why? Because it's like self-awareness that you develop inside, when you truly, truly can look inside and decipher and decode all that esoteric language that goes on inside of you, and you get it, and you understand it, and you unlock doors. It's like in the beginning of the journey, it's like standing on a hillside and you and I are looking at the sky. And I go, hey, what do you see? And you're like, what do you mean? And I go, what do you see? And you're like, stars? No, hey, what do you see? And you're like, I don't, and you're getting frustrated. I don't know, man. Like fucking stars? I don't know. What are you asking me? And it's like, right, okay. Now I'm going to take you to school for astronomy and astrology. And I take you to school for a couple months, and then we go back to that same hillside and I say, hey, point to the same sky. And I say, what do you see? And you're like, oh, geez. And you go, man, there's a Sagittarius, Aquarius, there's Gemini, Big Dipper, Little Dipper. You're looking at the same thing, but what you see is something entirely different. Meaning you see the gateway, you see the code, you see the matrix. It's like Neo in the Matrix when, right? Agent Smith, he fired the bullets and he sees them come and he stops the bullet and says, no, right? He says, no. And then he sees the code. It all makes sense. He understands it. He understands he's in a program. The way to get somebody else to change is through influence. It's like when we were changed, it wasn't because we were coerced, right? It's because we felt inspired. We felt motivated, right? By somebody else's journey. But a lot of guys have to get under, right? They're under their wife in this position of contempt where their wife doesn't respect them. So they got to get to a place where like their wife might not like him, but oh, wow, she'll respect how he operates and how he lives his life, because he lives his life in a way where he's a rare individual, right? He's not who he used to be. And you can have all the confirmation bias you want. He's undeniable. He's undeniable in the way he lives his life, mind, body, soul, spirit, as we talked about. And he's in a position now where she's looking at him and she's looking at how he's impervious to her emotional states, where her emotions don't dictate his mood and his day, right? And he's at a place in his autonomy where he's available for that stuff, but he's not codependent. He understands where he ends and where she begins. He's taken back his independence. He's taken back his self-worth, his self-esteem, his self-confidence. He's building these things. He's not relying on her to do that. And he's growing at a fast rate. And she's getting to a point, and this happens all the time inside the program, where he's getting to a point where she starts to become curious about his journey, about like, hey, how are you not getting reactive anymore? Like, how are you? I'm starting to realize that you're making me really uncomfortable because you're available for me, but you're not looking at me as I am your number one purpose and pursuit in this world. And that's making me realize that I need to get my shit together. I need to start working on myself. A lot of people say like, it takes two to tango. It does. But the reality is a lot of times it only takes one. It takes one guy to come be first in the breach. A lot of guys are standing, right? It's like they're standing at the Alamo with their wife and they're like, Who's going to fire the first shot? You change. No, you change. No, you change. No, you change. It's like, well, I'll change when you change. Like, well, you need to change. It's just this resentment building. And it's like, brother, you're wasting your life. You're wasting your breath. You're wasting your air. Hey, you got life to live. Hey, let's get you back to a place where you get your edge back. Let's align you and connect you with some real individuals who are on a path to help you, right? Let's develop some strategies towards solving these problems, and let's get you back to a place that no matter what happens in your marriage, you're going to be okay, and you can walk away with your head held high. I had a guy inside my group actually just sent this to me yesterday. He just sent me this text, and this is from his wife. I'll read it here. And his wife says, you're an amazing person. Despite what happened, his wife ended up having an affair. She said, and despite what happened, you're carrying yourself like a real man, like I never could in your place. And that's exemplary. Know that I always considered myself a strong person, but damn, you're so much more mentally disciplined than I ever could be. And that's strength that I admire in you. Now, he's decided that he's going to move forward in his life and he's going to end the relationship. But the reality is, it's like, okay, I told him too. I said, be proud of that. That's your character, brother. That says everything about you. How easy it could have been for you to go the other direction, but you didn't do that, right? You can have your head held high. And here's the reality for all the guys that are out there who've been cheated on, right? And you're worried about this next relationship. That whole relationship is built on the weakest, worst foundation ever. It's built on a foundation of lies, secrecy, and deception. So don't ever fear that relationship is going to become some magical thing that it is. You know what it is? It's magical. It's a big dopamine spike for your wife right now. And when you walk away from this relationship, right, that person's going to have to find out the hard way, and just do the right thing for yourself and have dignity and self-respect, because that's what this is. Because if you don't have those things, it doesn't matter about getting your wife back. You're always going to be in a position where you don't ever feel good about you, and your whole entire sense of existence lies outside of you.
Man, you are not wrong. Man, these are the stories, man. These are the things that are out there. The guys who find their worth, the guys who find their character, find their leadership, find their strength. And again, man, the bombs that you're dropping here, I hope people are taking notes. Like, I hope they are, because I have the same experiences, because we do what is right, not about who is right. And we pull these guys right out of their bullshit. And there's bullshit. Who's going to take the first shot? It's always us. Shut the fuck up. It's always us. It's us first. We have to go first. There's no question. I'm not waiting for her. I'm going. Yeah. And she's either coming or she's not. That's it. Like, I'm going either way. Are you coming with me, or are you going to stay here and bitch?
That's it.
I'm going either way. And so they don't understand that we're going to lead by doing. And I really enjoy it. I'm going to go back to the beginning, this dominance over influence, the obligation over being excited, the force versus lead. You said walking the walk. And I think this is something that guys forget. And this is where I'm going to push on our boys a little bit. The complacency because you have commitment. And this is where the stuff you used to do to get her, you quit doing it. You quit the chivalry. You quit the dates. You quit the effort. You quit trying for some reason. Now, not to say she didn't bullshit her bullshit. I'm not saying usually she does too. But you can only be accountable to your part. She's accountable to hers. Did you stop doing the things that you did to pursue? And we work our asses off to get her, but then we drop the ball on maintenance. Like, you got her, now you're going to keep her. Like, you're going to keep working. And I think this is something I try to remind the guys too. Just because you guys have commitment doesn't mean the wolves stop hunting. Just because you're like, I commit to you, doesn't mean the other guys aren't. Like, if you got a good girl, doesn't mean that they stopped hunting. And if you start becoming soft, you start becoming incapable, you start becoming, I'm no longer present, I'm no longer putting in effort, I'm no longer taking care of me, I'm no longer okay, and you start getting complacent, the wolves still hunt. They're still out there. Just because you domesticated doesn't mean the wolves went away. And she's going to start doing I call it the beauty and the beast, where at one point you were in apex. At one point you were the best option. At one point your potential was higher. At one point, but then something changed where you stopped going for it. It could be having kids. It could be getting married. And you are absolutely right, where we start taking on the traits of what we believe marriage is. And most of the guys, when I go like, so are you more like mom or dad right now? And they're like, fuck, I'm my mother. I married my dad. Fuck. Like they're like, damn it, that's true. And it does happen. This happens more than it doesn't. And so we get complacent and we try and use commitment to control. You're my wife. You need to start doing this and doing that. Or you're my husband. You need to do this and that. And the ownership starts creating resentment. You need to be what I want you to be, regardless of what it takes for you to be it. And we have to be accountable to ourselves. I like that thing. She comes down and listen, my baby's got her coffee ready already. When she comes in with her big lion's mane hair, that coffee is ready for my baby. I'll make you some coffee. I got you. But I'll be in there like you said, protein shake.
Yeah. Protein shake, like sending a message of hey, like when everybody was asleep, like I won't miss. I'll be unstoppable. I will be undeniable. Like I will be the guy who will be unfuckwithable, where you will look at me and you will say like, yeah, the guy's not perfect by any means, but damn, he's dialed. Like, damn, he's on point. And I think a big thing I wanted to mention, and this is something that I've been bringing up a lot with our guys, and I think this is a very valuable piece for anybody listening. As men, it's important to look at our reward system and the way we're wired from an evolutionary perspective. And a lot of times, like we establish these goals inside our career, right? Like, I'm going to achieve, it's like the reason a lot of us are so work addicted is because we achieve dopamine hits and dopamine spikes at work. It's the last deal that you got, right? It's the last, it's a new, new quarter, and you reached your KPIs and milestones. You're establishing targets that you want to hit inside your business. So a lot of times you're very wired, right? Because the pursuit of those targets is motivated by dopamine. Unfortunately, inside of our marriage, you have a lot of times like what was in it when you were courting your wife and you initially met and you were pursuing her. It's like, the idea at first was like, hey, I want to establish intimacy, and then you achieve that. And then it's like, I want to get married, and you achieve that. And then it's like, I want to buy a house, and then you achieve that. And I want to have kids, and then you achieve that. But then beyond that point, what we don't do as men is we don't have those weekly deadlines. We don't have those weekly KPIs. We don't have those monthly, yearly goals. We don't have anything established in our marriage where our reward system is wired around achieving it. It's like, so what we have is just this stagnant, dull thing where it's like, I've achieved what I've achieved. I've arrived, and here I am. And there's nothing more to do or accomplish inside this marriage. Right. So there isn't anything to pursue. There isn't any goal to go after. Right. So there is no dopamine. So there is no motivation. So there is no incentive. So there is no drive. So there is no commitment. So there is no action. So there is nothing. There's just me existing. And now here I am on my phone. And here I am getting these dopamine hits wherever else I can. And guys go to the porn, or they go here, or they go there, or they're working at home when they should know that they should be present. And then their wife's saying, hey, why are you on your phone? Why are you working right now? And they're getting reactive. Because why? Underneath it all, they know that they want to be present, but they don't know why they need to be present and what they're actually trying to accomplish by being present.
Man, so it's really powerful the way you connected the way that we work through our reward system for achievement and success versus our reward system from love and relationship. And it's a good, remember, it's the yin yang, mind and body. It's like, I know I have a tactics and now I'm going to execute. That's work. And then when it comes to the surrender element of like, how do I surrender my heart and soul to you and or our relationship? And we're like, I'm not doing that shit. I'm on work mode. And maybe I can work our relationship. And I think that's one of the things where you mentioned the word connection. And I think people have a wrong definitions. They just make up like, okay, well, we're near each other. It's like, no, shut the fuck up for a second and feel each other.
Right.
Like,
right.
I think you're missing it. Connection it's not my phone connection. No, it's like, can you feel your lady and can she feel you? And if she doesn't, there's a thing there to talk about, because a lot of our ladies are holding back that element too. Like, we're not connected, but who's going to lead? It's got to be us. And we are the standard. So when it comes to, well, what's the next level for the KPI? Well, you're building it. So what's the next level? It's you, man. You're the next level. And I say this in a way, it's not meant to be as derogatory as I'm sure it sounds, but listen to the lesson and not the judgments, is where I talk about our guys need to lead with purpose, and we're built for leading. We're built for purpose. We have to. It's core in our needs is to have purpose. And our ladies love a guy with potential. They love the element of safety, security. They love the potential to be able to push. And I also believe there's elements of ladies that are very positive that have been turned negative, like never being satisfied. You know, those elements are there too. But I talk about it as though we are like the owners of a dog. And now, again, ladies, it's a metaphor, you know, don't be the dog in this analogy. But what I'm saying is it's a metaphor where if we have a dog and I go, let's go for a walk. I'm going to go for a walk. And my dog fucking loves walk. Oh, if I grab the leash, he's like, we are fucking doing this. Wherever you're going, I'm going. I'm excited for the walk. You pick the direction. We're going to fucking rock it, man. I'm going to kick ass on this walk. I'm going to mark things. I'm going to have things. We're going to accomplish things. I'm excited as fuck. Wherever you're going, I'm going. I'm like, let's do it. That's my dog, right? And we get out in the front yard, and then I just stand there. My dog's still pumped. Like, we're going for a walk. We're going for a walk. We going? Which way? I'm good. Would you pick the direction? We're going to rock this shit. I got you. And I'm like, yeah. And I just stand there. My dog starts winding me up with the fucking leash and starts going back and forth and sits down for a second. I guess we ain't walking nowhere. Where the fuck are we going right now? Maybe dig a hole or some shit. And then starts getting a little fucking irritated, starts chewing on the leash and stuff, starts getting real annoyed. Like, I thought we were going for a fucking walk, and you're not going, you're just standing there. You're not doing shit. Fucking go for a walk. And like, we're not. And then we go like, well, maybe I'll just go sit on the couch. You're like, man, I thought this walk was going to be fucking awesome, man. We didn't do shit. And so our ladies are sitting there waiting for us to go for a walk. Where's your purpose? Are you building something? Are you starting a business? Are you going for your dream? Are you doing something that's worth fucking talking about? Can you go, my man, I wake up next to, and I am so fucking proud of my guy. And I don't have that. Hypergamy's not kicking in because I wake up to a guy who I'm like, that's the best I can fucking do. And he's awesome. I know I got a high value man, not a high value man because of his height or his finances or his fucking six pack, but because his values are so high.
Yes.
Because he's a high values man. It's not about superficial. It's about the man that he is. And that guy stands for shit and he's going for stuff and he fights for things. And that guy, he goes for fucking walks. And I love it. He takes me to the best places. He takes me to the best. We travel, we adventure, we overcome obstacles, and my man doesn't get scared because there's a road to cross. We look both ways and go for it. Yes. And like we are in it. And so I look at this analogy of guys who are like, baby, if you're with me, we're going for the best walks. And they're like, all right, you got high potential. Let's see if you're going to do it. And they commit to a guy for potential. And then the guy stands still. The guy stands still. He's like, I got her. I wanted to get the dog. I got it. I got the best dog. I got the best dog of all. And then I didn't go for any walks. But I promised the best walks. I didn't go for any walks. I didn't go for my dream. I didn't have a vision. I didn't set goals. I didn't have a relationship thing to make it so we can go to another level. I stopped paying attention to her needs and her desires because I got her. I didn't know what to do when I caught her. It's like letting the dog chase cars. They don't know what to do if they get it. And so here we are being we're not leading. Now, for the ladies, slow the fuck down. I'm just using the analogy. You calling us bitches? Well, some of you are being it right now, so slow down.
and that's, you know, women to a large degree, so many women are in a position where they're so uncomfortable with their own fallibility, just like a lot of men are. And so many women are in a position where it's like, well, that's not happening. That's not at all what's happening. You're just an asshole.
Look at that, dude.
And it's like, and it's like, okay, well, look at how reactive you're getting right now.
Yeah.
Like, if that doesn't speak to everything that's going on inside of you, but here's the problem. A lot of men enter relationships where the first conversation isn't, hey, you know, tell me about your childhood, or, hey, tell me about your attachment style, or tell me about your love language, or like those conversations don't happen. Or, hey, what's your primary defense mechanism when you get triggered, right? These things don't happen. It's not a common conversation. And so the problem is when you got two people living in the dark and you got one person shining a flashlight, that other person feels really attacked. And so it's like the guys, they got to make it. It's like, you got to cushion the blow. Like you got to give your wife an opportunity to acknowledge what's going on with her without feeling judged, without feeling embarrassed or ashamed. and with from a position of understanding, like, okay, this is actually really normal, right? I try to tell guys all the time, the best way to get your wife to acknowledge the issues that she has is by, number one, acknowledging that you've done it, and acknowledging it's acknowledging your own fallibility first, then understanding is if you can normalize the behavior, like, hey, reacting negatively when this happens is actually really normal, right? Then the person's in a position to go like, oh, so it's not about me, it's about this behavior. How many people are in positions in a marriage where they're just talking about each other's character instead of talking about the real problem? It's like, hey, I'm feeling like, it's like, you're talking about me. It's like, no, we're talking about the problem. This is the problem. We're talking about a problem, not you as a person. We're talking about a problem. And if we both as a team can't zoom out from an aerial view like a drone and look down on our issues and on our marriage and see it as it's happening and almost kind of make a joke out of it, right? And almost kind of see it like, look, hey, we're doing that thing again. It's like, yeah, we are. Hey, it's like, that's when you know you're in the sweet spot in a marriage, is when those things start to become comedy, because you see them and you understand that the hallmark of a healthy relationship isn't that there's no conflict. It's actually that it's not if couples fight, it's how they fight. It's that they're not hostile, is that they have a style that is validating. What are the two most common signs of a failing marriage? Two most common behaviors that are guaranteed to be happening in a failing marriage: invalidation and defensiveness. It's, no, that's not what happened. This is what happened. And it's, well, I don't agree with that. It's all of that. It's the invalidation and defensiveness that both parties are in a position where, because the other party won't validate their perspective, they're constantly defending their perspective. So there's the absence of validation, and there's just so much defensiveness and walls built up. And what you have is two people who are in a posture of like, my position's right, and I'm going to defend this to my grave because this is what it is. And it's like, hey, no, you're right, because that's your perspective. And you know what? You're right. But you also need to understand that I'm right too, because that's my perspective. And when we meet each other in the middle, we start to have those conversations where we get it, that conflict is not a liability. It's actually an asset. It's a gateway to a new relationship if I have a strategy to deal with it. But when I have no strategy, I just look at conflict as a negative thing. Or a guy walks on eggshells and he avoids conflict, or he doesn't like the conflict. I don't want to upset my wife. It's like, well, if you don't want to upset your wife, you're going to be fucked. Because you're going to be in a position where you're the kind of guy who just basically says, hey, let me emasculate myself in my own marriage because I never want to upset you. It's like, look, as a leader, sometimes you might make decisions that might upset your wife initially, but when she learns that it was the best decision that you needed to make for you and your family, she's going to thank you for it later. And you can't expect your wife to know how to solve these problems, right? You got to be able to pioneer a path. You're in the wilderness. You're in the jungle, brother. And I gave you a machete. I told you to make a path. You're going to need to start cutting. You're going to need to start walking. And yeah, there will be snakes. Yes, there will be wild animals. Yes, you will feel fear. Yes, there will be all that. But guess what? We will be alongside of you. We'll be right there with you going, you're doing the right thing. And you're going, but it doesn't feel like it, dude. I'm getting muddy. The rain's coming down. Like there's a lot. This is heavy right here. There's a lot of heavy greenery here I got to cut through, right? Keep going. My arm's getting tired. Switch arms, right? My arm's getting tired. Then give the guy next to you the machete for a minute, right? Or let's rest. Let's step back. Let's look at the path we've cleared so far. And let's take a little, right? Let's do a little inventory on this. How'd you feel about it? How'd you feel about the work that you did? What came up for you during this time? So I think guys are also in that instant gratification mindset a lot of times. Like, dude, you didn't get here overnight, brother. It took you 40 years to get here, bro. Why are you tripping thinking that you got to solve this in 3 days, like, or 2 weeks or 30 days? And my wife says, I'm not changing. It's like, well, probably because you haven't changed that much yet. And that's okay. Like, even if you feel, and here's the reality, don't use your wife's interpretation of your change as a gauge. I've also told guys all the time, like, never use your wife's reaction to what you do as whether or not what you did was the right or wrong thing. Like, you might do the right thing and your wife reacts negatively to it. That's not evidence to support that you did the wrong thing. It's like, oh, what happened? Well, my wife got reactive during this thing. Well, what did you do? Well, I had this conversation with her. Okay, so what'd you do wrong? Well, did I do the right thing? Well, That's not the right question. The question, how do you feel about it? Well, I felt good about it. Okay, then why are you using your wife's negative reaction as a gauge? But now you have no ability to ever have clarity, because all you do is clouded by self-doubt because someone's reacting negatively. It's like if someone wants to kill somebody and I take away a firearm from them and they get all reactive and it's like, is that evidence of the fact that I did the wrong thing? It's like, no, man, you did the right thing. You know what? People react negatively to people doing the wrong thing or doing the right thing a lot of times. So it's not about doing what feels good. It's about doing what you know is right. Right. And you got to determine what you know is right for you. And you got to be able to stand in line and stand in the gap and say, hey, I'm going to do this. People might react negatively to it, but that's not evidence to support the fact that I shouldn't have done it, or I should have done something different, or I did the wrong thing. Right. Look inside yourself. And I always ask guys, right, operate as the man that you admire. It's a process that I put the guys through. I always tell them to visualize, who is the guy that you admire? If there's a guy that you really were to look up to, a guy that you really thought lived above reproach, how would he handle this?
That's a tricky lesson. Man, I gotta stop you. You're bombing right now. Man, you dropped I got full page on just what you just said. All right. So also I call that chimera training. It's harder to do the one guy thing. I found that very difficult for myself. So what I do is I say build your own chimera. And that's a mythological creature of things that aren't supposed to be put together, like Frankenstein, if you will. Frankenstein your own version. And so take the traits of the guys you admire. Those
That's
guys
great.
that you admire, like there's things that Tim does. I like that he does this and this, but Tim's not like me. So he's a different warrior type. So I like his traits for that and that. But I also like this guy's compassion, patience, and empathy. But I also like this guy's hard work ethic and his drive. And I like this guy's vision and his ability to go, through obstacles, and put all these pieces together and Frankenstein all these traits into my style, my warrior type. Some guys are mages, some guys are barbarians, some guys are archers. I'm like, you're different warrior types. And so if I give a barbarian axe to a mage, it's gonna be like, this thing sucks for spells. Like it's not gonna work. And I can't put him on the front line. He can't fucking swing it. It's not his warrior type. But a fireball will blast a whole area. So do your style. And so build your chimera is like, it can't be one guy, because there's too much, like you said, accountability on fallibility, too much fallibility, but you can put traits together that are authentic. And now you've given yourself a target of authenticity that is you and the guy that you can be, because these traits are skills and not something you're born with. And now you can find an authentic you that you Frankensteined. That's the version of me that I could be. And now I have something that has meaning, possibility, purpose. And so that's a cool training, but it's tough when it's like, just be like Tim. And you're like, you do know my history is bullshit, right? Like, don't be like me, because if you have to go through what I have to go through, you're probably fucked.
Yeah, I want to be clear. So when
Don't
I
do
tell guys
that.
that, like I always tell them, you're not looking at a person, you're creating that person.
Yeah.
Right? You're not
Mythical.
looking at, don't ever look at another man. Look at it is you, but it's
Yeah.
you as like that avatar that you're creating. It's like the character in that game that's like doing the 360 as you go to select him and choose him. You're
What
changing everything about him, right? How would he
what
do
traits
this?
do you want?
Yeah. What traits do you want? And then let's just fasten those on and use that almost as a way to self-govern, right? So it's like, I'm about to do something and then I stop and I say, like, what would the man that I admire do right now?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that guy, that chimera, I'm thinking about him and I'm going, he definitely wouldn't react negatively. And it's like, okay, that's okay. We're going to use that then. Okay. What else would he do? He would definitely assert himself calmly and be clear about what he wants right now. Okay, then you need to do that. It's like, but I'm scared. It doesn't matter. You need
Right.
to do it.
Well, you're leaning
It's
in
like,
on your authenticity.
yes.
Fear is a very different thing. I gotta grab some of the stuff you said, man, because man, you were going through very quick on some very powerful things. And like I said, some of these ones I want to get back into, because you talked about the way that she reacts as being part of your scale. And as soon as you say, I'm going to bring some truth to the table, she's like, that's not what happened. You're an asshole. Like those kind of things when they come up. And wife's reaction being the measurement of my progress. I find it interesting when guys do that too. And I think, like, I very much align with you on, you're using the wrong scale for progress right now. She can't see it yet because she hasn't changed her sight yet, the stars. She still sees the same old sky. She hasn't done any new training. And because you have, she won't see, I learned constellations. She's like, I don't see what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so she won't see that. And using her as your measurement system is like you standing on the scale to see how smart you are. It's like, I'm still, whatever, 225. And you're like, yeah, that still hasn't changed at all. I'm not any smarter. I'm like, wrong scale, dude. That's not how you measure how smart you are. That's the wrong scale, and so we're using the wrong scales on these guys. But it's really interesting to look at that. It's not happening. You're an asshole, or the triggers that expose truth. And the things that I found for people, that's the hardest fight for men and women, is that denial. That's not happening. You're an asshole. For women, it's denial of reality. And
Yeah.
for men, it's denial of feelings.
Yeah.
And those are the toughest fights. And so when you say, hey, babe, this is the truth from my point of view, that's not happening. And then a judgment. You're an asshole. That whole thing, that's a complex system that's happening right now. First, I deny reality. I'm at the war with what is. And then I create shame or judgment to make it so you feel bad for not seeing what I say you should see, thus making it so you should be different because I deny reality. I need you to alter yourself to fit what I believe is right. And that's the system that's being used right now to make it so the emasculation makes sense, not because I can beat you, but because I need you to beat you.
That's so dangerous for guys, because what you're doing is you're actually reinforcing, if you go along with that, you're reinforcing something that is a system that is already designed to fail. So you're
Correct.
stepping into something. You might temporarily avoid whatever in the heat of the moment argument is happening, but you're stepping into a system that you're actually reinforcing. You're creating more of, actually going to make the problem worse, because you can validate your wife without agreeing with her.
Very much.
You can say to your wife, hey, I totally understand how you would feel that way. And you know what? That's totally normal to feel that way. I've actually felt that way at times too. And I could totally see that. And you know what? I totally understand that. And if you felt that way in any way regarding what I did, I apologize, because I love you and I don't ever want you to feel like that.
That's the one part that I stop. I see a lot of guys lean to apology.
Apologies
I
will
don't
be appropriate if you look inside yourself and actually believe that you actually need to provide one.
agree. And this I would put apologies in extreme situations, and people use
Mhm.
apologies as a blanket. And this goes into like the Marshall Rosenberg, like NVC stuff, where he's like, there's jackal speak. It's shame talk. Say you're sorry, Tim. No. Say you're sorry like you
Yeah,
mean
we're
it.
not doing that.
You know what I mean? This is the
Yeah,
shame. Like,
no,
you should feel bad. Say you're sorry. And
no.
I actually, Andrea and I, we don't apologize often, because we need to acknowledge and then say what it is that I want to do better. And then do we have an agreement on being better? But I don't
Yeah,
need to feel sorry for learning.
no. And the apology should really be based on, it's like, you should only be saying, I'm sorry, when you feel like convicted by what you did and you're not okay with how you acted because it's not in alignment with your core values. And so you're like, the apology is a declaration about the fact that I'm not living in alignment with the man that I want to be. So it's like, hey, I apologize. It's not about what I believe you want, or that
But,
like
but
you.
even the way you just said that sounded so much better than the apology. Like, that's
Oh
where
yeah,
I'm at with this, is we're like, I don't feel like I'm in alignment with me. And so here's what I'm going to start doing differently from now on. Are
so
you
much
okay with
better.
that?
You
That
can
sounds
say,
better than saying
you can
sorry.
apologize and say sorry without actually saying those
You,
words.
you're damn right you can.
Yeah.
You're damn right. And that's why what you just said to me sounded so much better than I'm sorry, is like, I'm not in alignment with myself. And I, to be better, will do it this way
Yeah.
next time. Are you okay with the level of growth that I'm trying to go
So
for
much
you and
better.
I to be in agreement? I don't
So much
have to
better.
feel shame for like the mistakes. I have to learn from them. And if there's guilt and shame involved, this means I do not have training. I'm looking at the sky wrong.
Right.
I don't have training. You looked
Right.
at it as you are bad, not how do I improve. And so that's where you said the defensiveness and invalidation. The answer to defensiveness is listen to understand, or the invalidation is listen to understand. The defensiveness is it's okay to disagree. You're correct. And people aren't using their tools or their weapons in these
Yeah.
battles.
Yeah. It's also learning. It's something I call ethical manipulation. Is you got to know that you got to learn how to I use like a lot of Socratic questioning when I'm working with people, right?
Very hard to do, by the way. I
Right.
fucked that up for years before I got good at it.
Yeah, Socratic questions are really powerful. Like it's pointed questions that are not rhetorical sometimes, but they're questions that are designed to, it's like if you know something's going on, you ask a question where the answer to that question is their recognition and acknowledgement of what it is. So instead
Mhm.
of just making a statement, you're asking a question where the answer to that question actually is a statement that you wanted to make, right? And
Well,
it's very powerful when,
asking it in a way that like I'm not trying to control the conversation. I'm asking as though I know nothing.
right.
So please
And
explain.
even though I do. So it's like
Mhm.
you're not using dark psychology. You're learning how to use language and tools to create conversations that invoke introspection for both parties.
Correct. And the goal is not to shame. This is where people like
No.
I've seen the Socratic method used pretty aggressively by 3-year-olds where they can just be like, why? Why?
Yeah. That's
Why?
the
And
worst.
they will kick your ass. At some point, you're like, I don't fucking know.
And that
Like,
comes across really inauthentic when guys do that, when it's like, when they get into that, because that to me is like, it's almost borderline people pleasing behavior where it's like, well, why do you feel that way, honey? It's like, okay, well, tell me more about that. Why? And it's like, bro, you're ruining it now. Now
yeah,
you're not understanding. Like, no, brother, like stop pretending like you're not clear. That's the one thing that really gets me about a lot of guys is you're like, you're in this position where like, you're getting into rabbit hole arguments with your wife that you know is a rabbit hole, but you're engaging yourself in that circular argument. And the problem is you're not speaking and articulating yourself with clarity to show that we know what we're talking about. If you're standing on the hill and you're pointing and you're saying like, it's stars, it's stars, it's stars. And I'm telling you like, hey, look, with all due respect, you're pointing at Sagittarius right now. And I'm telling you that these three stars are aligned. It's okay that you don't understand that. And I don't need you to agree with me. Okay. But I'm telling you with clarity that that's what this is. Right. It's like guys, they don't have the ability to stand in their own confidence and stand in their own truth and to assert themselves, not from a place of dominance, but actual true confidence in what I'm saying and what I believe and what I know to be true. And so what they do is they get in this mode of like placating their wife. Let me tell my wife what I think she wants me to say and what I think she wants to hear. And it's like, bro, you're digging yourself a hole, right? Because what happens is she's inevitably not going to respect you. She's not going to respect that. And there's going to be a position where you just go along with it. And now you're not, the beautiful thing is two people who can look at things in two different ways. And we can see that the law of polarity, you see it one way, I see it another. And there's beauty in that. There's beauty
yes.
in that. And you know what? Like, I like that about you. That's what made us, that's what made me fall in love with you to begin with. That's what made me, right, want to be in a relationship to begin with, is that you didn't look at the world. I don't need you to look at the world the same way that I do. Because if I want to impose my view of the way that everything is in my life onto you, what is that really about? More or less, it's about me never wanting to feel challenged, me never wanting to feel like I ever have to look inside myself like I'm ever wrong or a fallible human being who makes mistakes.
Mhm.
And so many guys are in a position where they are that guy, where you have three types of guys, right? And these three types of guys that usually have problems. You have aggressors, right? Guys who usually are impulsive, angry outbursts. They usually use the power through. Usually, a lot of times they have a passive wife. The wife is very soft spoken. She's very more of a gentle type. She's not very assertive at all. She's more like retracts and recoils inside arguments, and he tends to be more domineering and more aggressive, borderline. Has some narcissistic tendencies as well. Just borderline controlling and overtly just aggressive. Then you have, and guys can be all three of these, but usually they're like we talked about earlier. They're usually more commonly one. Then you have the avoider, right? Who's a guy who's avoidant. He's more he avoids conversations. He's more dissociative. He disengages. He unplugs. He disconnects. He neglects himself and others. He's very just checked out from reality, and he's not present. And he's an avoider. He avoids mostly everything in his life. Potentially even has self-destructive behaviors or vices to help him do that. And then you have guys who are pleasers, right? You have guys who are, you have a guy who is bends over backwards, placates his wife. He's a yes man, doesn't have boundaries, doesn't know how to say no, right? The typical pleaser type where he walks on eggshells, wants to avoid conflict, wants to please his wife, and believes that pleasing his wife is the gateway to a better relationship, right? So with those three types of guys, what might work for one guy won't work for another, right? So you try to tell like for some of these guys who are highly aggressive, like what do they need to develop? They need to develop more empathy, the ability to stop, to actively listen, to reflect, to look inside themselves, to acknowledge their own fallibility, that they fight arguments, and their desire to always be right, to win the argument is actually a strategy of losing, because they're losing everything in the process, right? You don't need to win every argument. This is about understanding you can create win-win situations. It's about creating win-win where both parties walk away feeling seen, heard, and connected. And you have the avoider, right? What does he need to do? He needs to confront situations. He needs to actually learn how to approach situations and be bold and courageous in his pursuit of handling things as they show up in his life, right? He needs to not be so dissociative and disengaged. And then you have, right, that pleaser type. What does he need to develop? More confidence, his ability to look inside himself and know his truth, right? His ability to not overly identify with everything his wife is going through, his ability to stop his codependency, stop his behaviors that keep him, right, prevent him from drawing the line of demarcation between where he ends and where his wife begins, right? But with all three of those guys, there's three different strategies, three different archetypes, three different pathways, so it's for every guy, they're in a different situation, right? And a lot of guys are not there. Some guys are in a roommate situation. Some guys are in a totally abusive situation. Some guys are in a situation where they literally are the primary problem. Some guys are in a situation where their wife is more of a problem than they are, right? But regardless, it doesn't matter, because they're the problem, because they're not doing anything to change the fact that there is a problem. So guys ask me, why don't you talk about women's issues? Number one, I'm not a woman, and number two is if you're not going to stay you have two choices: go or stay. If you're going to stay, then how is there any other option other than taking extreme accountability and ownership for why your marriage is the way it is? How is there any other option? If you're going to be a victim about this and you're going to stay stuck, you're never going to solve it. True. So either we're going to get into action, you're going to take ownership for why this is the way it is. And I'm not at all saying that these things aren't happening with your wife, but the reality is you need to lead and you need to become clear. Because if it's like standing in a lake and you're in knee deep water, and both you guys are kicking your feet and there's a lot of mud, and you're looking down and going, stop. And then she's going, no, you stop. And you're going, no, you stop. When you stop moving your feet, it's going to become very clear about who's doing what underneath the surface of that water, if that water is still murky, right? You're going to know, well, I haven't moved my feet and the water is still murky, still muddy water. So guys have to be in a position, you got to know who you are. You got to know where you're operating from. You got to know what your problems are. So the cornerstone to your path really is that awareness.
Yeah, you're right. You want to hear a fun game? The accountability and awareness. Like accountability is later in the program because it's a brutal topic, but awareness is first topic. You went into aggressor, avoider, and pleasers. Do you want to see a really cool way this works in another direction?
Yeah.
So part of my next book is the association I haven't seen psychology do between our grieving system, our fight, flight, freeze, and fawn system, mixed in with the enemies within, which is fear, excuses, distractions, and doubt. And they're all connected in a way that I haven't seen people put together. And so that's part of what this next book is about. And aggressors are going to be part of if you're looking at the grieving system, that's anger. I'm going to be angry. I will lead by attack. That's going to be the fight system. And that's going to be dominance with what is false confidence. He's loud and aggressive. He must know what he wants, and nobody fucks with him because he's too tough, when really he's just terrified of his own fucking shadow or his own emotions, and he can't be honest. And so he has to keep everybody separated from him because the truth is going to be too much. And so fuck that. And so fuck you and fuck off and sit the fuck down and shut the fuck up. Because if you get close to me, you're going to see I'm really just a dude who didn't get enough hugs. And I don't want you to know that. So that's your fight system, and your grief system is anger. If you go into the avoider, that's actually two different parts. The avoider is flight and freeze. Flight is going to be hide, suppress, or retreat. That's an action. That's a direction. I'm going somewhere with this. I'm getting away from this. Now, freeze is surrender, no fight. I just froze. I'm done. I stopped. There's no fight left. I give up. And the avoider may look like both, but it's actually two different systems. One is denial, which is hide,
Yeah.
suppress, and retreat. That's denial. And depression or sadness is freeze. I give up. I surrender. I have no will to fight anymore. And it's a sadness thing, is I'm too sad to even continue. And so that's two different systems put together in your grieving cycle. The pleasers are the confusing ones for people. That's connected to bargaining. And
Yeah.
that's the bargaining system in your grieving cycle. I call those the negotiators. What do I have to sacrifice for you to be okay? And this is where, if you looked at each of these systems, fight and flight are hit the gas, freeze is hit the brake, but people pleasers, negotiators, is hit the gas and the brake at the same time. And that's why it's the confusing one, because it looks like it's supposed to be good because I'm trying to help. I want to go towards Tim because he's angry. And I'm gonna be between Tim and the kids so they don't get hurt. I'll
Right.
take it so
Right.
that Tim's okay. And it looks like I'm the good guy. I'm the hero.
Right.
When really I'm compromising my integrity. I'm compromising my authenticity to try to make the damage mitigation lower for others, which I just keep taking the hits. And these people are living such an inauthentic life because they are no longer themselves and they're no longer loved. And the people who want to do that type of damage to them are generally also showing the murky water they create. The people pleasers usually end up with the narcissists, and those are the ones
Yes.
who will just take and take and take and
Yes.
take and take until there's nothing left and go, why the fuck did I ever love you in the first place? And that's where they'll usually attract people who are very unhealthy and needy because they need to be needed by someone who has a lot of needs. It's a very unhealthy codependency system with people pleasers, but the fawning system gets unnoticed often. And it's probably one of the more dangerous ones. Now, I think almost everybody starts with avoidance. That's the suppression. Everybody starts with, like, I don't want to fucking deal with this.
Yeah.
We
The
start there.
denial is the first stage of that grieving process.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's the nastiest one too, because it looks like protection. The
Yeah.
other ones set off alarms, but denial and distractions, they don't set off alarms. They come in through
Yeah.
pleasure and protection. And that's, where the devil works in that area. That's addiction, is denial plus distraction.
Yes.
That's where addiction comes from. And that's where, like, when you start doing deep work, it's not your identity, it's your denials. Let's get into the hurt. But these people pleasers, or the after the avoidance part, the people pleasers get off radar because the fight and the flight, or the fight and freeze, are so loud. He broke down crying and he just started fucking being a bitch. You're like,
Yeah.
damn, you hit him with that? That dude's crying right now. He's not okay. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
being a fucking bitch right now.
Yeah.
Fuck. That poor dude's heart's broken. That's how you treat that? That's you. You revealed you to yourself.
Yeah. 100%. Yep.
And then you see the angry guy. Remember, I did a video. It blew up when I was on the To Be Better podcast, where they're asking, like, guys have to go to anger because when we go to sadness, we're judged and rejected. And so we have to go to anger for a false sense of confidence. He
Yeah.
looks like a badass. Don't fuck with him.
Sublimation.
But anger is just going to be all the sadness pushed into that. So anger is how men cry.
Yeah.
That's how we cry, is we
Yeah.
get angry because we can't cry. So we cry through
Yeah.
anger.
Anger, and plus anger is typically something that's socially acceptable and validated as men. It's something that it feeds into the facade. And anger, the sad part about anger is anger, we all know, is secondary. You can only be angry if you're truly hurt or afraid. Underneath the anger is always something else, no matter how much of a split second that occurs in. You anger, but it's sometimes also anger is necessary. Healthy anger, healthy use of anger, right? It's like some of these guys need to get upset. They need to get pissed off. They need to feel what it's like. Okay, yeah, it's removing the denial and the acknowledgement of, like, this is where I'm actually at. And you know what? Fuck that. Like, I'm not going to stay here. I want to change. I want to grow. I don't want to be here. Thank you for this. Like, yeah, it's like when you tell a guy, like, hey, they're going on and on about a story, and you're like, hey man, why do you keep going in circles about this? Can I ask you something? Like, or can I tell you something? It's totally normal, man. And you know what? Like, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need to fight that. Like, you don't need to give me 5 million excuses as to why it's wrong and why this is no, brother. Hey, injustices occur.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, well, what do you want to do from here? How do you want to go? How do you want to move forward? Because it's really up to you. A lot of guys have never heard that before. They're in a position of back to the shame. It's back to the shame again. It's back
Mm-hmm.
to the shame and the guilt, right? And what I should have done, what I could have done. So they're living in a deficit. It's like they're not living in, they're focused on who they were and what they've done, not where they're going and who they're becoming. And it's like they're stuck in this trap of not realizing, like, hey, man, you are not obligated to be the person that you were yesterday. You know, like,
Well, they didn't get any new star training though yet. And so they were trained by their
no,
parents who didn't know that just the sky shut the fuck up,
it's the
and so,
conditioning.
yeah. But your Aristotle is showing. And so this is where Aristotle also said the same thing. They say anger is bad in almost every religion, except Aristotle says, no, it's not. Anger notices injustice and gives you the direction to do what is right when other people are trying to manipulate or do what is wrong. Aristotle says maybe it's not all bad. Maybe it is maybe we're not mistakes to have anger. Maybe it's not. Maybe there's a purpose for it. And you're right. And this is where, like, you correctly said, at least one of the categories, there's something unfair or unjust happening right now. And fuck that. Or something was taken from you or lost. We don't like that. Or especially in relationships, and this is where people really struggle, is there's an unmet need. And again, that's Rosenberg, is everybody's outburst is some sort of a tragic expression of an unmet need. There's something that I needed, but I didn't know how to say. I just need you to fucking listen. So I need to feel heard,
Yeah.
or validate me. Please notice my existence. I need to know that I'm important or valued. But people don't have the self-awareness to be able to articulate their needs. And so they're just angry and they expect you to know without ever saying. And
Yeah.
I don't know, but I expect you to figure it out, which is an impossible task.
Which is
But
like rocket science, right? It's like, it's people trying to figure out something. It's like and that's what I'm saying is guys placing these expectations on their wives, or wives placing these expectations on their
yeah,
husbands to decipher a code that he didn't even read the sky yet. He doesn't even know the star system yet. So,
it's the
and have to,
bartender.
yeah,
It's
it's
a
like,
bar.
come
I
on.
got one for you. I'll tell you what, Tim. You be the greatest bartender in the world. You know every drink. You are a master of masters. You have taught the greatest of the greats. And this is the relationship dynamic people have. I come to your bar and, man, you got it stocked. Your shit's together. You are the man. And I heard nothing but good things. A 1,000-star review. You're the best, right? And I go, Tim, I heard you're the best of the best. No one better. I want something amazing. Get me the best drink you can think of. I can't wait to have the best of the best drink. And you're like, I got you, man. What drink are you going to make? What's the drink that you're like, oh, I'm going to blow your fucking mind, right? Now, I don't know if you really know that or not, but, like, do you have a drink in mind?
No.
Okay, good. So let's just say you, like, I got this elaborate drink, something that's got, like, you have to set a fire and it fucking has, like, umbrellas and shit. It's got all kinds of stuff. You put the coolest drink you can make. You're crunching shit and got a fucking gavel involved. There's all kinds of magic happening, right? You fucking, there's a puff of smoke and shit. And then you give them a drink. You're like, this is the greatest drink of all time. And I'm like, give it to me. And I'm like, ugh. Ugh, not my fucking drink. Oh my God. What the fuck? No, that's not my drink. Tim, give me a good drink, man. I want the best drink. You're like, oh, you don't like that one? All right. Well, let me try this drink. And so let's give you something simple. I'll Jack and Coke your ass. Like, I hate Jack. Not my thing. I thought you said you were good at this. No, give me the best drink. All right, man. And then I'll make you maybe a Long Island or a Blue Motorcycle. I'll make you something. I'm like, here you go. This is a very elaborate, kind of cool drink, common, but good. And they're like, oh, too strong. Oh, I don't like it. And you start realizing no matter how fucking good you are, it has nothing to do with what that person's needs are. And you're trying to guess of how many millions of drinks there are. I don't know if you want orange juice or milk or a fucking glass of water with a lemon. I don't know if you want an elaborate martini or if you want, I don't know what you want. And you're not giving me anything here on the menu. You're just saying, give me something good. But good is subjective. And so I'm giving you the best drink. It's the highest rated drink ever made. And you don't like that flavor, though. You hate pineapples or some shit. And I'm like, well, fuck me. I don't know. It's your taste buds. And so how are you going to be the greatest bartender if I never ordered anything? And
It's
that's
so
why
true.
people's relationships are goofed up. They're like, you should just know. Like, well, you never ordered shit. I can make any drink,
Yeah.
but you never ordered what you want. I'll fucking make it. Just ask me
Yes.
what you want.
And what is good to you? And if you really started to decipher that, wouldn't you learn that actually you are you're placing an obligation, a demand, and a command on another human being actually to solve something that you should be solving yourself? Right? The problem was you didn't come into the bar knowing what you wanted. And even if I wasn't clear about how to make that drink, you could give me a rough explanation of how it would be created. You could describe it, but you had no language. You had no ability to do that. So you're actually asking for something from me that you should be providing yourself. And you're making it an obligation of mine, right? To adhere to this system, and you're getting upset with me when really the frustration is coming from the fact that you actually don't know.
Well, I shouldn't have to. And if you can't figure it out, Tim, I'm going to go to a better bartender. You're not that good.
See, and that's the point guys got to get in the relationship, but they realize then go.
Well, that's what girls are doing right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Where you're like, I'm still a fucking badass bartender just because you didn't order something
Yes.
you wanted.
Yes.
And that's the confidence there. That's the autonomy.
And yes. And don't think I'm not going to continue to learn more drinks in this process. But if this is not enough for you, then I refuse to settle for breadcrumbs inside this relationship. Then I am not desperate. I am not in a position where I'm willing to constantly be usurped and be operating from a position of inferiority where you're exalting yourself over me in this marriage. I'm done.
Based on judgment and
Here's the problem.
mean behavior. Yeah.
I see a lot of guys, and they're Christians, and they feel spiritually obligated to remain in a relationship. It's like, well, the Bible says, unless there's infidelity, I can't leave this relationship. And they feel as though there's some type of spiritual obligation for them to stay in something that is clearly abusive, clearly abusive. But they remain in it because the pastor said I need to work on it, and these guys have been trying for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. And I say this all the time to these guys. It's like, hey, have you ever put that on the table as a conversation, not as a threat, not to coerce anybody, but just to say, hey, like, if this doesn't improve, like, I've genuinely considered moving on, and I'm serious about that. Like, I'm genuinely considered moving on in my life, and I just want to let you know that.
Yeah, that's a heavy sentence too. It's funny when this thing gets weaponized.
Yeah.
It's funny when this is a weapon. And
yeah.
For those of us who have a connection to God, I wonder what God makes it so that you need to live in hell, and that's how you serve me. It's like, wait a second, he didn't create you for misery. He didn't do. I don't know which God you're talking about. Maybe Old Testament, I guess. New Testament doesn't do that. I don't know what you're talking about. Are you a Christian? Because you should read Christ. He doesn't say these things the way that you're talking about it. And a lot of times the interpretations get goofed up too from church hurt. I got a question for that guy. All of these abuses that are happening, especially emotionally or even sometimes physically, it's not infidelity, but which vows matter? Which vows are the important ones? Which ones can we throw in the garbage?
Thank you.
Which vows can we break? I just want to make sure which ones don't matter. You're like, well, she stopped honoring me, respecting me. She's not with me in sickness, especially not in health. She doesn't love me. We're not intimate. We don't have anything together. There's no effort to grow. She's not even fucking trying. She's the meanest person in my life. I'm like, well, which vows matter? Because we can break every single vow except I just didn't have intimacy with another person. And that's okay. I can be as abusive as I want. It's not sex with another person. I'm like, I don't know if that is what the idea for this commitment is supposed to be. And so when people weaponize the Bible and use God as the excuse for abuse, that's not the God that I follow. He's not like, you have to be here to get fucked up by this lady. That seems more like somebody trying to manipulate God's reason or purpose for you to leave
That
you
sounds
stuck.
that sounds like a byproduct of the abuse itself, more than an actual connection and clear interpretation of what God is trying to do in their life. It's like, hey, brothers, it's like when guys will say to me, like, I'm just so afraid, or like, I'm just scared. It's like, hey, step back. I want you to realize that it's not about this situation. This fear, all of this whole cycle of fear and guilt that you're in is a part of the abuse. It's a byproduct of abuse.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not just feeling fear and guilt because of this circumstance today. It's like, no, bro, this is part of the pattern that you're in. This is the conditioning. This is how powerful it is. And this whole cycle is fed by your fear and your guilt. It's that contemptuous cycle. You fear the contempt from your wife. And so then you start to spiral down in the anxiety spiral, right? When you start to enter that anxiety spiral, right? Then what happens? You walk on eggshells, right? Or you try to placate your wife. And then what happens? Inevitably, right? There's some type of disdain or some type of contemptuous trigger, right? That triggers the contempt. And then what? When you don't acquiesce and you don't conform to those rules that have been established for you, right? Then what ends up happening? Well, your wife sees that as confirmation that she needs to go back to it,
Yep.
right? That you're not conforming. So you're not conforming to the system. So you know what? I need to go back to it. And guess what? She sees you're conforming to it as confirmation as well, that it validates the system as well.
Yes. And you are not worthy of following. You are not worthy of listening to. You are not worthy. You're not worthy. And it validates those guys' unworthiness. And so they live in doubt and shame and depression, and the depression and anxiety stacks. It becomes a very vicious cycle simply because they actually didn't lean in on faith. They leaned in on just punishment.
Yes.
They leaned in on you deserve to be treated this way because, and it's like, which God and Christ are you talking about? Like, which ones? I don't know which ones you're talking about. It's like, damn, man. Damn. That's you? That's where you're at? It's scary, man. It's scary to watch the patterns, too. It's scary to watch the patterns. And these guys, especially faith side, you're like, man, I don't know which God you're talking about, but living in judgment and living in these false prophet things where people say, like, you have to do this, you have to do that because the Bible said so. I'm like, you should read Christ, because if you're going off of what the church says, I don't think you know who Jesus was, or Yeshua, or wherever you go with it. I don't think you know the guy, because if you read him, I'm pretty sure he pissed off everybody at the church. Like, I'm pretty confident Sundays, those are for man, not, Sabbath or we are for the Sabbath. He pissed off everybody. Who killed him? It was the church. The church said, kill that guy. Let Barabbas go. That guy needs to be killed, and torture him brutally to do it too. Why? He pissed off the church. And if you're not defiant or challenging everything, and not in your warrior type to say, I have to challenge this, and I can do it in a healthy way. But if you're telling me I deserve to be abused because you guys have a book, I don't agree. And I don't believe my Jesus would say, stay in here and let her just degrade you into the fucking ground and never stand up for yourself, never live in your purpose, never feel confident, never feel worthy. Stay isolated and just give every resource you have. Just give all of it until there's nothing left, and then she can tell you how you're worthless for that too. You should do that. That's Jesus. That's what he says to do, right? I'm like, which fucking Jesus are you talking about?
Yeah. Give all of yourself until you have nothing left. And then when you're all gone, when nothing's left, they say to you, it's still not enough.
Yeah.
And then you realize that you've given all of yourself and you don't even know where to go from here.
You've seen Sadia Khan's a big proprietor of these things. She's a psychologist, talks about the narcissism that's being created by women today in social media, and how these behaviors are becoming glorified and more common. And she's even against Western marriages, saying, like, it seems like there's nothing in it for the men. We end up becoming the reward system for them being abusive and aggressive towards leaving and, swiping right. So I'm going to marry you as like a security system for my next relationship, where I get paid alimony or I get paid something. You're going to pay me for me doing anything I want. I can leave for any, she can be cheating on you the whole time. She can do anything she wants, and she gets half still. And what's in it for guys? We just get destroyed. And so, I'm not red pill guy, but I see the merit in these people saying, we should at least look at the way the contract is set up here. This doesn't look like it's set up for an equality thing. It looks like it's set up for one to be destroyed.
Thank God for women who are doing the work and who are conscious and aware.
The largest men's,
my wife that's conscious, that is aware, that is, understands my needs, and is for the women out there that hold true to good core values and good morals, and understand that what it is to embrace the femininity of that role inside of marriage is everything.
And those ladies are starting to step up too, because they're realizing the pendulum is going far.
Oh
These are
yeah.
our daughters. These are our daughters who are out there, and the influence that's being put on our girls and the world that's going to be left for our sons. It's not healthy.
No,
It's very
no.
unhealthy. And so the largest advocates right now are becoming women. The women are like, no, 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 ladies, stop.
I
Hot
love
girl
that.
summers is a price. There's a price to this. And you see the guys going like, you want the high values man, you want the good man, the noble, kind, compassionate, has all his shit together man. You want that man, and yet you give all your value out to everyone for fucking the
It's
biggest
crazy to me.
scumbags on earth.
Crazy to me.
You're
Like,
seeing
hey,
this.
I saw a video. It was a guy. He was interviewing two people. You might have saw this, and he asked the couple. He asked the guy's girlfriend. He said, "Hey, would you be upset if he liked a girl's picture on social media who's wearing a bikini or something like that?" And she said, "Well, yeah." And then he asked her. He said, "But you're okay posting pictures of yourself in a bikini for other people to like all day? How do you think he should feel about that?" And then she was like, "Well." And then the guy was like, whoa. The guy was like, whoa, I didn't even think about that.
Mhm.
And it's like, man, these are things to consider, and in my mind, at the end of the day, it comes back down to that man, because people aren't problems to be solved, right? You can't control people, right? But the reality is at the end of the day, it's like, you got to know what you want, and you got to create standards in your life.
Yes.
And you got to be willing to say, this is what I want. I'm clear about what it is. I'm open-minded and flexible to learn, but I want to know my truth, because I'm lost and I don't have clarity. I'm looking at the sky. I can't see what's going on. I need to get right with me first, and then work to a place where through this process, I can begin to grow and evolve to where, you know what? If the marriage ends, at least I come out a better man and I win regardless. And you know what?
Yeah.
If I save the marriage, okay, I save the marriage. But there is no other path other than me becoming a warrior.
That's the only way for guys. And this is where you pointed out a very large thing. My 15, or she's 16 now, but she was 15 at the time. And I was talking with her, and I mentioned those kind of things. And even with herself, when she has her own thing, she does the same thing. Girls just do this. Remember, the denial of reality is their hardest curse. It's the toughest one. And I found out that women gaslight their introspection. Like
Yeah.
they don't call it what it is. They
Yeah.
won't do that. And so when she sees him liking what she does from someone else, he is judged as bad. But if other guys do what he would be bad for, she is good. And I'm like, how are we measuring this? Because you hate the behavior unless you're the receiver.
Right.
And like, you judge everyone else as horrible for what you're doing. And so my 15-year-old said, we're really good at everybody else's truth and very bad at our own.
Yeah.
I said,
Powerful.
you're very, very wise on this. Now apply it, because you're fucking your own shit up. So get your shit together. But no, she works with me on that stuff, and she's working through some tough things. And it's tough for the kids on these ones, because you're seeing the infrastructure that's set up for that gaslighting. Also, it's really difficult for the values of women, the femininity, because you're watching people give it away for free for so many years. One of the
Yeah.
tougher stats that are coming out is you see girls in their early 20s. The average now is where their body count is around their age, and that's in their early 20s. And that's average. It's not high, that's average. And you're like, oh, these numbers are becoming interesting, because these girls are sleeping with tons of guys for free. And then once they start hitting their 30s or wherever, and they start to decline, they expect a guy like us to then pay a premium, 300K plus a year, pay a premium for her, when she's given it away hundreds and hundreds of guys, and within a 10 to 12 year period,
Insanity.
even faster. And this is where women are finding themselves like, I'm just too much to handle, or they just can't get it. And you're like, you're gaslighting the truth right now. You're not being honest with you. You have lowered your value by doing free samples to everybody, and then you
Yeah.
want somebody to buy the farm.
And let me guess, all those guys are narcissists too, right?
Well, of course, they have to be judged, because it can't be me. It has to be
Right.
everyone else.
Right. So they're all narcissists. But the irony is well, who is a narcissist? And you can't describe it. So all you can do is throw out buzzwords and terminology as a way to absolve yourself of whatever guilt that you feel inside. So of course, every man that you're with is a narcissist. But the irony is, but you said you loved him, and he was the best thing that you ever met when you met. Well, he love bombed me. Okay, I'm sure he did. Sure he did. Sure
Gaslight
he
our
did.
truth.
Other than, and we'll talk to him about that story and what is, come to find out, the guy says, dude, it was totally, dude, she was cheating on me with another guy, bro. What are you talking about? That
Yeah,
was what was
she
happening.
was sleeping with 4 guys at once. I was
Yeah,
just being chivalrous.
I was just supply. And then
Yeah.
and then you talk to him and he realizes that and he goes, and then you hear the story. It's like, yeah. And then what does society do? Society tells it, hey man, it's like, hey, it's back on you. So that's why I want to be clear about my messaging is always like I don't ever want anyone to misconstrue my message. My message is to a very specific person with a very specific problem. So it's not ubiquitous in the sense of men in general. I'm
Correct.
speaking to a very specific type of guy who is the primary problem. And I try to tell those guys, like, look, like there only is one pathway out. And the pathway out is for you to realize that you're stuck in a system that is a self-fulfilling prophecy that you feed into. Correct. And the mental health system in America has failed you because it's relied on you reaching out to it. Mm-hmm. But here we are, guys like Rick and I, with our hand out saying, hey, we're reaching out to you. Right. So if you're a guy that's listening, like you're listening to 2 guys who were in the same position that you were in, like we're reaching out to you. It's part of what this podcast is about. It's part of what our journey is about. It's part of what our mission, vision, and values are about. It's part of what our purpose is about. Is we're reaching out to you. That's what this podcast is about. This what these messages are about. Is to let you know, like, hey man, you're not alone, and we have our hand out to you. Like we are putting our hand out through the call, through the podcast, through the books, right? Through whatever conferences and whatever other free resources and programs that we offer and provide you to let you know, man, like there is a place for you, right? And it's about you finding that recipe that works for you, because no matter who you are, you got to believe in what you're doing. And a lot of times it's not your fault that things haven't worked for you, but it is your responsibility because you just haven't found a system that worked, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that because psychiatry or therapy failed you, that something's wrong with you. Nothing's wrong with you, man. That you haven't found what works, and that's okay. It doesn't mean anything. It just means you haven't found a system that worked for you.
So keep searching. Yeah, you need training. There's only trained or untrained.
Yeah. You're either practiced or you're not, right?
That's right. Well said, man. That's awesome. That's a good spot to leave it here, man. This has been such an honor to hang with you.
This is awesome.
Tim, where can we send our guys who just, man, I resonate with Tim. That's my dude. Where can we send them if they're like, I want to book a call? How can I do that? Like,
you can connect with me at any time. You can reach me on all my platforms. So obviously Instagram, beyond__driven. You can reach me on TikTok, beyond.driven, Facebook, beyond driven. And then obviously you can always go to our website. We have a website. It's go.beyond-driven.com.
And we're going to have all your links. I'm going to make sure all the links are in this thing. So click on the damn links, book a call with Tim and his guys, and let's see if we can get between the 2 of us, if we're not matching for you, well, you're probably going to have to be in a very different kind of group than what we do. We build warriors.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been an honor, brother. I just want to say thank you. We've been in flow state for like 2 hours. This has been awesome.
Mm-hmm. It's fun when guys like us can just take the wheels off. We don't have to worry about oh man, am I going to go too far or too fast? It's like, just go.
And I just want to honor you, man, for all the work that you're doing, brother, and just all the value that you're putting out there for these guys, because they need it, man. And I just want to honor you for all the work that you're doing and just how you're serving these guys, man. And it's been a privilege to be here and connect with you. I had a great time. So thank you.
Yeah. Oh, we'll do more, man. This is good.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, brother.